Part 25. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 241. Before the new year, Li Yuan took his parents to get some styling advice, and Zhang Yuling picked out another set of festive clothes for them. A sense of ritual is still necessary. By the way, this was done over 2 days. On New Year's Eve, Zhang Yuling was more active than anyone else. She took photos of everyone wearing new clothes at home, and even asked Li Yuan to take a photo with her, which she sent to the group. Then, that photo went viral. After all, in a sense, Li Yuan has the same attributes as the god of wealth. In the past 6 months, he has helped more than 600,000 people make money, and the average amount for each person is 60,000 yuan. Although there are a few large funds, the proportion is not very large compared to the number of people in the hundreds of thousands. Of the more than 30 billion in profits, Li Yuan only took away 3 billion, Zhou Ranran took away 1 billion, and 13 Taibao took away 600 million. Going from unknown to the richest man in the country in half a year is an experience that normal people would envy. As a result, that photo became the avatar of countless young people. After photoshopping, the emoticon package of the God of Wealth was also released. Li Yuan doesn't mind others using his image rights for entertainment purposes, as long as they don't use them for fraud. He told Zhang Yuling, "Don't send out the photos of us together for the time being." "Oh, got it? Thank you, wife, for understanding." Because of Zhang Yuling's presence, the atmosphere at home became much stronger. Both his parents and himself are willing to express more emotions because of her existence. After all, he had more and more interactions with his parents in his previous life. Although there was a generation gap, it was mostly because he was unhappy and didn't have the energy or occasion to express it. Between family members, what is needed most is communication and expression. It's similar to love. The stronger the expression, the more happiness you can experience. Eating snacks and chatting, they started at 8 o'clock in the evening and had a midnight snack at 12 o'clock before Zhang Yuling was ready to rest. Li Yuan asked his parents to go to bed as well. After all, he had to rush back to his hometown early in the morning. The father insisted on keeping vigil, and finally Li Yuan took his place. Traditional rules are indeed very rigid, but in fact they are also a kind of adherence to principles. After midnight, he received a lot of messages. "Happy New Year from Xu Yanlin." Photo sent by Cao Yuan Yuan. In the photo, she is wearing a red sleeveless cotton padded jacket, which is very festive. Sitting on his bed, he made a New Year greeting gesture with his hands. Yu Yu and Yao Ying song must be the same. Even Chen Ji sent a message. Li Yuan chatted with Chen Ji for a while, and then gave her a plate of melon seeds from home. After all, Chen Ji couldn't sleep either. It would be a waste of time not to eat some melon seeds. He gave the melon seeds and left. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when the vigil was over, he ran back and took a nap. When I woke up again, it was already 8:30. After washing and eating some food, I headed back to my hometown with my dad. There was enough time, and my parents had already put other things in the car in advance. After arriving at the garage, Li Wan he gave the driver a red envelope, which was prepared by Zhang Yuling. In the car, Li Wan he said, "I'll go to your grandma's house later, and then you can sleep there. I'll finish my running around in the morning and come back for dinner. I'll just go home and sleep. There are probably a lot of people there." Also, another moment passed. Li Yuan said, "Dad, Yuling won't go back to his hometown for the whole year this year, and Mom will stay here. The villa is built. You can take care of the decoration. Just follow Yuling's ideas. You can choose the materials. I also know that I should try to finish the decoration by June, otherwise I won't be able to come back during the Chinese New Year. After the house is renovated, it will definitely take half a year. A lot of materials are used, and some adhesives are inevitably used. That thing contains the most formaldehyde, and Zhang Yuling had just given birth, so the impact was relatively large. The house is easy to build. It has only been about 2 months and we have already started laying the foundation and building the garage. It can be completed in April, and the surrounding environment will be repaired at the same time. It will not be difficult to complete it in June. Well, it's almost time. I've seen the drawings, and I'll go find someone to order the materials after a while. The nature of Li Wanhe's work has changed. In the past, it was to earn money to support the family, but now it is to live comfortably as a family. Then I will arrange a car and driver for you then. Just bring me a car. I'm tired of driving that three-wheeler every day. I want to drive in a car instead. Then don't drive drunk. If that thing is recorded in the file, your grandchildren will not be able to pass the political review in the future. Li Wanhe. That makes sense. If nothing happens to Li Yuan, then the family will not be short of money, and the goals of future generations will definitely change in a different direction. The car took a detour and came to where Li Qiaovu and Luo Changrong lived now. The location is a bit remote and it's still an old house. There are a bunch of chickens and ducks raised in the yard, and there is a faint smell in the air. When Li Yuan came over, he saw Cao Ping chatting with 2 old people. Seeing Li Yuan get out of the car, Cao Ping walked over and shouted, "Mr. Li, Happy New Year." "Happy New Year to you too. My grandma lives in such a remote place. How did you find this place?" Cao Ping smiled and said, "Everything in the county can be found out by asking around." "Then you represent an individual?" No, everyone entrusted me to come here as a representative. There are major entrepreneurs and relevant leaders. I would like to thank Mr. Li for bringing visibility and jobs to Qinghe County. Then come in and sit for a while. Li Yuan wasn't particularly sleepy. He wasn't going back today anyway, and it would be the same if he went to bed in the afternoon. Li Wanhe didn't stay here for long. He was very busy in the morning. He brought gifts to him years ago and he has to go back today. I don't even go to other people's places to eat. I have to go through the formalities. Li Yuan and Cao Ping chatted for almost half an hour. They didn't talk about work, they just talked about some local customs and gossip. At 10:30, people came one after another, and Cao Ping found an excuse to leave. Li Yuan accompanied them to socialize for a while, and was forced to take a group photo for a long time. Anyway, the mobile phones around me have never been disconnected, and people are still taking videos here. It'll be fine next year. After the planning of the village is completed, there will be a gate extending more than 100 meters from the residential area, and ordinary people will have no chance to enter. After lunch, he returned to the house he was renting, and there was no one around him to disturb him. Even in the afternoon, Li Wanhe was busy. Anyway, it's either a wine table or a card table. After sleeping until about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, he found that his father had not come back yet. "I made a call and heard a lot of noise over there. I'm at your grandma's place. Come over for dinner later, spend." Li Yuan. Only grandma can tolerate this son, and she is probably watching happily. He was indeed a little hungry, but he didn't want to go there. There are too many people, most likely elders, who don't know what to do there. After washing up, I was about to go out to buy some food, and then I saw Zhou Ran at the door. "Why are you here, Sister Ran?" Zhou Ran smiled and said, "When I called my dad, I heard that you were awake. Would you like to have a meal at my house?" "Huh? No one is at home. I asked you to eat, not to eat me. Besides, I don't know how to cook. If there is no one, what will we eat?" "Forget it, I've been gossiped about too much today. Your parents won't know how to gossip about me later, so I'll buy some myself." Zhou Ranran, my dad is not here, but I am at the card table with your dad. My mom just got me some food and will leave soon. Well, I guess there won't be anyone selling food outside on New Year's Day. After Li Yuan followed Zhou Ranran to her house, he found that there was no one at her house. Moreover, Zhou Ranran seemed to have planned ahead, preparing meals for 3 people. Wang Qi just immersed herself in eating. After eating, she went downstairs and stared. After all, by now, she knows what she should know. She really didn't know that Li Yuan was so rich before, and she really believed the story they made up. Now even Zhou Ranran's parents are beginning to be suspicious. One can only imagine what her personal assistant is thinking. While eating, Zhou Ranran said, He Jianchuan and Gao Ming went back the day before yesterday, but there was no place to live here. They stayed for a long time and then left. How to say? He Jianchuan is the very powerful attending physician in the village. He bought a house outside and took all the elderly people in the house. He rarely comes back. Gao Ming is even more powerful. Li Yuan only knows that he is an executive in a large company with an annual salary of tens of millions, and he is the best person in the village. He was just a technical secondary school student back then. Now in his 40s, he has worked hard on his own every step of the way. I didn't say anything. The main thing was to thank me. I also said that the elderly in my family were not used to living in the city. They also said that they would pay for the decoration and building of the house themselves and let my dad take care of them here. Li Yuan sighed and thought of Lu Hao again. Let's not talk about the other ones for now. After all, they are really young and have not had much contact with them in the past few years. Lu Hao had no desire to move up at all. He felt that everything was already enough and he just wanted to get married and have children. They can come out if they want. If they have a place to live by the end of the year, they should be able to sit down and chat. Well, they do have that intention, but you just happen to be away and they don't have a house here. The main reason why the 2 of them stayed was because they thought Zhou Ranran had done a good job. The village has gradually decayed over the years. They still have feelings for the village, but their feelings cannot be used as food. Without the atmosphere of more than 10 years ago, they would only be looking for trouble when they come back. Zhou Ranran didn't show how much she was worth, and the excuse was that she had a boyfriend. This kind of thing itself is not very tempting. They can refuse millions of cash purely out of emotion. Now that Li Yuan's identity has been exposed, they have to consider reality. Then let's see what they think, and if they are willing to return to the village, I will make arrangements. There are 3 types of people around Li Yuan now. The first type is represented by Zhou Ranran, who has feelings and foundation. The second type is those represented by Zhang Yuling, who have background, strength, and ability. The last type is those who only care about their beauty. These 3 are relationships that can be maintained for a long time and complement each other. Overall, the second type of force is the strongest, and it is also the one Li Yuan is actively trying to win over. The third type has the least sense of existence. It doesn't exist now and it will most likely not exist in the future. What he has to do is to balance and expand the power of the first type of people so that he can balance the second type of people in the future. Otherwise, when a dominant family appears around him, he will easily suffer backlash. Personal energy is limited, and most things have to be arranged for others to do, so the information obtained is given by others. For 3 to 5 years or even 10 years, when he was at his most powerful, no one could make a splash. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or even 30 years from now? He didn't mean to guard against anyone, but to leave a way out for himself so as not to be deceived in the future. After all, the benefits are exciting. The chance of Zhang Yuling having problems is small, but what about the people around Zhang Yuling? But Li Yuan needed to use their abilities to do something, so he couldn't stop eating because of choking. So even if he knew that Lu Hao couldn't help him, as long as Lu Hao's heart didn't change, he was willing to give him a chance. He can't have just one voice around him. There are two other types of relationships that are optional. Classmates, friends. Even though Li Yuan didn't think he needed any friends, in fact Wen Yuxian and Song Jiajia were both friends. These two relationships cannot be compared with the previous three before they explode into huge value. Xiaoxi Xiao and the others, actually. Zhou Ranran wanted to say something else, but after taking a look at Li Yuan, she ended up not finishing. If you want to help, then you can, but I agreed in advance that if you help, I won't help. Forget it, just pretend I didn't say anything. Zhou Ranran knew her own strength very well. What could she do to help them? It's nothing more than giving them some money. But if you can do something like sending money once, can you do it twice or 3 times? Even a lifetime? Only by taking action can Li Yuan give them a platform to develop their own abilities and live a life without worries about food and clothing. She doesn't have this ability. Anyway, Li Yuan didn't say anything to Death. There is still a chance, just wait slowly. Sister Ran, we are still young and have plenty of time. Zhou Ranran said, but I found that after having children, I was less willing to use my brain. I could read books before, but now I prefer to watch videos and follow TV series. Then we'll wait until after the child is born. You may have to help your child with homework in the future. You can't forget what you learned before. But what if I still want another child? Are you crazy? One is enough. Li Yuan is very vigilant now. Anyway, in recent years, he has only planned to have these 2 children to make up for some of his wishes in his previous life. Zhou Ranran lowered his head and whispered, maybe this is an excuse for me to be lazy. Giving birth is much easier than studying, so I just want to be a lazy person. This lazy person is not lazy in action. After all, raising children is exhausting. She wants to be a mentally lazy person. Why do you want to be a lazy person? I'm satisfied, I don't need anything anymore. But if you become lazy, I can't guarantee that our children will end well in the future. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 242. Li Yuan must have used exaggerated words, mainly because he didn't want Zhou Ranran to stop. There's obviously no time now. It's not too bad to say this after you turn 50. Stop now, her future identity will be that of the child's mother, nothing else. No one knows how her mentality will change over time. Even if the power around him is out of control, Li Yuan is sure to arrange things for his sons and grandchildren. Not everyone is Zhang Yuling, and Zhang Yuling will also change after having children. There is only one thing that remains unchanged, and that is the meal, which Li Yuan spent hundreds of millions on. On the 2nd day of the Lunar New Year, I went to my parents' house. Because Li Yuan did not go back, Zhang Yuling and Zhou Wan went over. When he was in the 3rd grade of junior high school, Li Yuan had dinner with several other boys. Halfway through the meal, Lu Hao ran over. Li Yuan happily asked about the recent situation. On the 4th day of the Lunar New Year, he said hello to Zhou Ranran and asked his father Zhou Yifang to look after the chickens and ducks every day. Li Yuan took his grandparents to Zhangzhou. After all, those hundreds of millions could not be wasted, and he only needed to take care of them for 3 days. When I went there were 3 people crowded in the back, but overall it was quite spacious. When we came here, the rooms of the 2 elderly people were also tidied up. Anyway, there are many occasions to live here this year. When Zhang Yuling gives birth to a child, the 2 old people will have to stay here for half a month before they are satisfied. At 7 o'clock in the morning on the 6th day of the lunar month, Zhang Yuling went back first, followed by Li Wanhe and Zhou Wan. It was after 8 o'clock before Li Yuan took the 2 old people there. This was the first time that Li Yuan saw the 13 Taibao in their entirety. All of them were indeed glowing and full of happiness. Zhang Yuanqiao was an exception and looked particularly haggard. Today's matter is nominally an engagement. In fact, it is no different from getting married. It's just that there is no traditional wedding ceremony. In fact, all the raw rice has been cooked into porridge. If Li Yuan wants to go back on his word in the future, he must weigh today's witnesses. Not only his elders, but also Zhang Yuling's elders. Business is business, life is life. You should have your own set of solutions to things in life. You can't, Li Yuan, be so rich that you can just go back on what you promised, right? No matter how rich you are, no matter how high your status is, if you regret being with Zhang Yuling in the future, you will be stabbed in the back. Under Zhang Yuanqiao's introduction, Li Yuan got to know the other 7 or 8 unknown 13 Taibao. There are 4 tables in total today, 2 for seniors and 2 for juniors. Li Yuan's parents are in charge of the elders' side, and their main function is to control Li Wanhe's drinking capacity. After all, the people present are quite powerful. Li Yuan was much more relaxed. Zhang Yuling introduced him to some of her childhood playmates. Although Zhang Yuling became more and more withdrawn due to her personality, she gradually came into contact with high school and rarely returned to college. At home, the number of meetings became less and less. This group of 3 generations has a lot of energy. Some are still in college, and some have successfully landed. They may join their elders at any time and are ready to go. But those are all individual, and most of them are still dawdling. For example, Ho Wenbin nominally works in his parents' company, but actually he doesn't want him to fool around all day long and get into trouble accidentally. Zhang Yuanqiao asked these people when he was writing the invitation, and he finally agreed. As for what Zhang Yuanqiao told the 13 Taibao, he didn't know. This incident itself was Zhang Yuanqiao's tentative intervention in himself and the help he was looking for Zhang Yuling. If you are willing to get married yourself, these dowries are nothing. Besides, if you make good use of it, everything in the future will be much more convenient, and you don't have to arrange everything for you and Yao Yingsong. Yao Yingsong will leave sooner or later, and there is a high chance that he will be promoted step by step in the future. It is not necessarily a good thing for him to do too many things for himself. You can handle things at the company level just fine, but other things are unrealistic and too busy. That night, Zhang Yuling said to Li Yuan with a smile, "Husband, you won't regret it in the future, right?" "What are you regretting?" "Marry me, just wait 2 years. I'm afraid that once I say I regret it, even my bones will be ground into powder the next morning." "Haha, who makes me so good? Everyone is my supporter." Li Yuan's popularity is indeed not that good. The 13 Taibao knew what kind of virtue he was. My parents and grandparents also heard some gossip about him all day long. Although they were not sure, their hearts were inevitably biased towards Zhang Yuling and felt that Zhang Yuling was wronged by being by his side. "There's no such thing as a backer. I simply like you and want to spend the rest of my life with you." Zhang Yuling. When did this guy start talking about love? Still so disgusting. For Li Yuan, it is a talisman after all. Because if something happens to him in the future, he will basically die. Zhang Yuling was able to save his life probably because her parents earned her a gold medal to avoid death. Li Yuan believed that he would never use this function, but having it and not having it were completely different concepts. "Then remember to marry me in 2 years. "Good. Come on, let's go open the gifts." In the process of opening a gift, the important thing is not what the gift is, but the word opening. Anyone's curiosity about the unknown or their desire for new things will be revealed at this moment. Boxes of various sizes filled a room, probably 60 or 70 of them. There are cheap supplements in there, only tens of thousands of yuan per box. There are expensive jewelry and jade, ranging from hundreds of thousands to millions to tens of millions. This one is for mom, this gold one is for grandma. This is also, I keep this for myself. There seems to be nothing for Dad and Grandpa. How about we buy it ourselves? Li Yuan said, you don't need to buy it, they will have it in a few months. What? A child? Yes, otherwise even if I prepare something for them, they won't take it. In their eyes, the most important thing in the past was money, cigarettes, and alcohol. Now, children, cigarettes, alcohol, all kinds of jewelry are just floating clouds in their eyes. They don't even need to buy new clothes, they can live with what they have. Are all men like this? Not really. There are quite a few differences. It's just that my family is a little more normal. Except for him, no one in Li Yuan's family has a bad character. That is to say, his father will get on the card table when he has nothing to do, especially during the holidays, but he can restrain himself at other times. Yeah, I like my parents so much. What do you like about it? Zhang Yuling said with a smile, Mom is very considerate, but Dad is very old-fashioned. I give him something, but he is too embarrassed to accept it. What about me? He. These two simple words already represent Zhang Yuling's understanding of Li Yuan. Come on, let's go to the bridal chamber. Let you haha. Husband, I want to ask you something. How many bridal chambers have you had? Of course it's just one, who do you think I am? Heh, Husband, actually it's not all because of my parents. When I first got together with you, I really felt that sense of security in you. What I said is true. Well, I believe you. You believe it so quickly. Yeah, I've climbed halfway up the mountain, and you suddenly told me to top up so I can keep going up, otherwise I'll fall down and die. What can I do? Hey, I already believe you, why are you still there? Stopped. On the 7th day of the Lunar New Year, Li Wanhe followed the two old people home. Li Yuan also started his first day at work. The company is still in Zhangzhou for the time being, and the capital side will be the location of Qingtian Group. At the company gate, Li Yuan came over early in the morning and gave 800 yuan in red envelopes to all employees working. On the first day of trading for A shares, there was no good start. Because A shares don't pay attention to these things, green is green when it should be. In the new year, a series of economic data met expectations. In particular, Western financial data were far worse than expected. Anyway, it has nothing to do with Li Yuan. He only made a few money from it, and it won't affect such a large scale. To put it bluntly, their financial structure is at an end. On the surface, the price-to-earnings ratios of US stocks are generally 20 to 30 times, which is much lower than that of A shares. They are sound value investments. But it's not like that at all. There are far more companies losing money in the US stock market than companies making profits. Moreover, the so-called price-to-earnings ratio has almost no high reference value. When capital wants to promote you, it will make your data very beautiful. Even if the market value rises to $2 trillion, it can still suppress your price-to-earnings ratio. The P/E ratio is for those who believe in value investing. A company that made $20 billion in profits last year could lose $50 billion the next year. The capital market is based on final profits, not floating profits and losses. Some people say that the US stock market is a 10-year bull market. As long as you persist for a few years, you will definitely make money. Anyone who says this is just saying it as an afterthought. Do you have the ability to make him say this after the US stock market crashed 4 times in 2020? Talking about the past from the perspective of the future, there are stocks worth buying at any point. If you had bought bank stocks 10 years ago, even after 2 rounds of stock market crashes, the stock price would still have doubled after 10 years plus dividends. If you couldn't predict the future in the past, you can't predict the future now either. Unless you learn and make progress within this time. What scares me the most is that I only grow older. Li Yuan called Yao Yingsong to the office and said, "Get ready, the next 3 phases are about to start." Yao Yingsong was stunned for a moment and said, "Boss, you won't take a rest anymore." Li Yuan shook his head, "The market is not going well this year. Let's do it in advance. I'm afraid it will be harder to do it the longer you delay." "Okay, I'll make arrangements right away." Yao Yingsong admires Li Yuan's execution ability. "It's your first day at work and you're busy with work?" Since the last time, even if he said that the third phase would be launched in 3 to 5 months, no one would say anything. This is the power brought by the right to speak. Those who underestimated him either ran away, entered, or struggled in pain. Even the best will be slapped in the face. After Yao Yingsong left, Li Yuan called Yu and asked him to communicate with Song Jiajia and implement the things he promised to Qinghe County in the name of Qingtian Group. At the same time, he also called Song Jiajia to implement Bixin's operation methods for the next year. In the past, Bixin relied on game anchors to promote Bixin. Next, we will not give up on this point. However, we will conduct in-depth cooperation with Jushin Media and use beautiful women as gimmicks in the form of scripts to create recognition for Bixin on the entire network. It mainly includes arranging game anchors to play games with Bixin, signing contracts with Bixin beauties to accompany them, and conducting in-depth exposures with big influencers from Jushin Media. Of course, the most important thing is to conduct local promotion on university campuses. This was the main reason for the sudden rise of Bixin later on. There were other X-Moon dogs and XX voices. There were a bunch of AI robots in them, or behind them there were cross-dressing men with voice changers. Even the IP address could be changed at will. The kind of that thing is purely about scamming money. It is no different from those so-called dating websites. After entering, a bunch of ace will chat with you privately. "Brother, are you there? We are nearby, can we chat? If you still want to chat with me, please activate the chat service. Chat with me. It only costs 1 yuan per sentence. My sister is waiting for my brother." Real girls are the reason why Bixin can rise. If any website lacks output content, it is impossible to truly retain users. After chatting with Song Jiajia for almost half an hour, Li Yuan finally finished speaking. Then I sent her the copy I had compiled during this period. "Li Yuan, don't worry about one thing. Jushin Media has signed a contract with Huizong. Once production starts there, we won't have enough sales here, and we won't even have room to put it. So far, Jushin Media has not been able to cultivate a second fishing anchor with more than 1 million fans. It's okay, Lu Hao will be back soon." "How is that possible? I am living a good life now." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 243. Li Yuan didn't know if Lu Hao was doing well, but he knew that Lu Hao had wanted to come on the third day of junior high school, but he had been pestered by his girlfriend. Because he had confessed in advance that he was not allowed to bring his girlfriend, it took him a long time before he sneaked out. During the meal, Lu Hao even turned off his cell phone, just to avoid the woman's constant calls from interrupting the meal. Looking at the overall situation, Lu Hao's internet celebrity girlfriend is playing a very important role. Lu Hao's life is still controlled by others. His parents also play a role in this. A life destined to receive no benefits and suffer huge losses cannot last long. Life is also an exchange of interests, feelings, attitudes, and actions. Instead of just asking, scheming. No matter how bad Li Yuan was, he would still give what was due. The third phase of Qingtian Global Selection Mix officially entered the process on the 8th day of the first lunar month. This day is also the beginning of February. Li Yuan's model worker attitude shocked the National Fund and Tang Jianjun. They also know to take advantage of the Chinese New Year to have a few days of rest and not make any big projects before the Lantern Festival. Fortunately for Li Yuan, intense work will begin on the 7th day of the lunar month. It's still 37%. Qingtian Group will spend 3 billion, and the National Fund will spend 7 billion, making up 1.5 billion US dollars. When Li Yuan was about to go out to work in the middle of the night, he was stopped by Zhou Wan. "Where are you going to work at this late hour? There's nothing we can do. We can only live at this moment. You go to sleep first and leave me alone." Zhou Wan watched Li Yuan leave, feeling a little guilty in her heart. She has no idea about finance and even less understanding of the market. When Li Yuan came back from outside at 6 o'clock in the morning, she felt that her son's job was not very good. It's really like a vegetable vendor. When Li Yuan was sleeping during the day, she originally wanted to call Li Yuan to have lunch, but was stopped by Zhang Yuling. "Mom, let him sleep a little longer. If you wake him up now, he probably won't be able to sleep. It's okay to have some food and then sleep." Zhou Wan is still adapting to Li Yuan's job. From the initial incomprehension, until 3 days later, Li Yuan looked very tired every time he came back and could only eat 2 meals a day, and she began to feel distressed. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, after Li Yuan went out, Zhou Wan couldn't help but said to Zhang Yuling, "Yuling, why don't you advise Xiao Yuan? How can he live like this all day? He is not short of money. He is a big boss who does this every day. Be busy, don't wear out your body. Besides, do you have to stay up late at night to work? Not during the day." Zhang Yuling has also been paying attention to US stocks recently, and the overall market situation is extremely bad. Li Yuan has been under a lot of trading pressure recently, which can be seen from the fact that he doesn't speak much. "After waking up every afternoon, I would stay in the study for a long time. Mom, this is also a job for him. It doesn't mean he won't do it if he wants to. At his position, it has little to do with whether he makes money or not. The meaning of his work is not about how much money he makes. His decision, we just don't interfere. After all, we don't have that ability. If he really can't hold on, I won't let him go to work again without your advice." Zhang Yuling didn't know Li Yuan's data, but he also knew that Li Yuan's main business now was pension funds. He makes money no longer to increase his own wealth, but to gain more say. If he does not do US stocks and has no chance in A shares, then the foundation he has worked so hard to build will gradually collapse over time. Zhou Wan stopped mentioning this matter from then on, and time passed little by little. There is nothing special about the Lantern Festival. Li Yuan he is handling matters in his hometown. Even if Li Yuan doesn't go to work, he will still be in the study at night. Zhou Wan would wake up in the middle of the night and prepare some food for Li Yuan. Li Yuan noticed the worry in his mother's eyes. After all, in their minds, staying up late is bad, and eating 2 meals a day is unhealthy. But they don't think it's bad for others to do this, and it's not good for their own son. Li Yuan had long wanted to move out, lest his mother would be upset if she saw him. "But I didn't move out, so I thought a little bit about it." Even though he came forward to solve some things, there were still some things that he had no way to participate in. There were compliments from neighbors, guidance from some caring people, and there were too many compliments from my parents. Originally, at their age, there was nothing wrong with them enjoying themselves. But I have never encountered these before, and it will take a period of adaptation. Whether you can survive this adaptation period is very important. My father is now very swollen, which can be shown in many details. My mother didn't say anything, but she felt the same way. So Li Yuan deliberately let her see that it was not easy to make money by himself, and making them feel distressed would help them get through this stage. Li Yuan has been reviewing the results during the 2 days of vacation. He tried trading more than a dozen stocks last week, with almost no success. It's not that there is no money inside, but that the funds inside have no desire to operate at all. Even if he released the bait, no one would try to cut him. He is not afraid of others causing trouble. Making trouble represents an opportunity. He is most afraid of others not moving. The current state of US stock capital is, I would rather do nothing than make a mistake. The best way for capital to deal with a bear market is to do nothing and wait for the wind to come. Once you lose your chips, you won't be able to fly higher when the wind blows. No wind? Rain is coming? Then most of the people are finished together. For capital, the first thing to see is always the benefits, not the risks. If all capital would be concerned about risks, then there should be no short selling in the world. The risks of short selling are visible to the naked eye, no matter what the market is. The situation at this time is that capital sees no benefit at all, and the bait offered by Li Yuan is not very attractive, so he is not moved at all. All Li Yuan can do is disperse funds. The number of traders has increased to 15, and they basically place small amount short orders, which is how most of the funds in the market do. Spread across hundreds of stocks to ensure that funds will not be targeted due to excessive concentration. Correspondingly, you can't make much money. If you're lucky, you can make 2 points a day. Not lucky at all. After 2 weeks and 9 trading days, I only had a floating profit of 26 points. Yao Yingsong spends 2 hours every day sorting out the dense transaction data. If it had been Yesheng, he might have thought Li Yuan was playing him again. The failure to achieve the expected results was not only due to market conditions, but also due to quantification. The quantification of the US stock market is earlier than that of A shares, and the scale is even larger. In A shares, quantitative funds are also restricted by rules. In the US stock market, there are relatively few restrictions, and countless quantitative funds are flooded in to make ultra-short-term investments. No matter how bad the market is, they can make super returns. Many large capitals have invested billions of dollars in quantitative procedures, which have become increasingly mature and given more and more authority. In this regard, Li Yuan really can't compete with quantification. If you don't look at the whole, but only look at individual stocks, Li Yuan has suffered a lot from quantification. For example, Li Yuan spent almost $20 million on Raymond Pharmaceuticals, which had a market value of only $6.3 billion, and suffered a loss of nearly $2 million, and finally withdrew in embarrassment. He felt that his opponent was quantified and caught every ban too timely, much faster than his side. When encountering this kind of situation, one must run first out of respect. There are not many stocks with the most votes in the entire US stock market, and Nvidia is one of them. After all, Nvidia's share price just doubled last year to $80 billion, and this year it will almost exceed $100 billion. He spent almost $200 million to go long in it. The third phase of the fund is the most difficult one so far for him. Being able to liquidate it in 3 months is already the best result. For Morgan, keeping an eye on Li Yuan's account is a very important thing. Since Li Yuan started trading, all the data in his account has been targeted. It's just that the operations are too scattered and there is no way to snipe. Li Yuan's largest sum of money was stuffed into Nvidia, but Nvidia's ticket contains a lot of funds, and many big Wall Street capitals are making money in it. You can't let everyone give up profits just for the $200 million aimed at Li Yuan. However, after recently checking Li Yuan's transactions, Mondale discovered that Li Yuan had lost money. He lost 10 points on Raymond Medicine. This is the biggest loss he has ever seen Li Yuan suffer so far. He is very interested in the funds in Raymond Medicine. Who can force Li Yuan to cut off his body and leave? This is the person he desperately needs to win over. After arranging for people to inquire, he frowned. It turned out to be a quantitative company on Wall Street. The company's quantified total assets were only $2 billion. Compared to Morgan, which oversees more than $3 trillion, that company is too small. However, the fact that they were able to defeat Li Yuan was worthy of Mondel's olive branch. Hey man, want to join Morgan? There is no doubt that no one in Wall Street capital can refuse such a temptation. Morgan itself also has quantification, but the algorithm is different between each quantification. Zoom into individual stocks, and the difference becomes very large. Transactions between quantification and quantification also occur frequently. There are pros and cons to quantification. If the authority given is too small, the space for quantitative display will be very small, making it difficult to make a profit. If you give quantification enough authority, you will make money quickly, but once someone catches the loophole, you will lose money even faster. Therefore, at this stage, there is not much capital that dares to allow large funds to be responsible for quantification. It is small funds that are slowly polishing the algorithm. After the two parties hit it off, the other party obtained Li Yuan's position information from Morgan. At the same time, Morgan invested $2 billion, plus the other party's funds, to prepare for an all-round attack on Li Yuan's funds. Li Yuan's funds were swallowed up bit by bit. Man, tomorrow night, I need to see the news about the collapse of Qingtian Capital. I have prepared all the financial headlines on Wall Street for you. Yes, sir, don't worry, eating the other party's funds is as easy as eating the cheese in my hand. Monday night. After Li Yuan came to the trading room, he began to reformulate strategies. He needs more profits to liquidate this issue as soon as possible. This issue is his first project after the two parties reached a tacit understanding. Even if the environment is very bad, we should try our best to end it within 3 months. Although it had little impact on later cooperation, it had a great impact on his personal image. As long as he can do this, he can take advantage of the remaining warmth in the first half of the year and open the fourth period. After the fourth period, the child was born and he was able to rest for a few months. After this year, the next 3 years will be good. Whether the economy is good or the economy is bad, both are considered good opportunities. The biggest fear is that whether the economy is good or bad, the financial market will be like a pool of smelly stagnant water, with no ripples when the wind blows. Today he took matters into his own hands. While issuing instructions, you can operate your own funds at the same time. As long as we can make a profit of 3 points every day, in 3 months, $1.5 billion can successfully reach $10 billion. As he slowly fell into place, about an hour or two later, he noticed something was wrong. Not only him, but also other funds encountered big problems at the same time. The trader needs to feed back news to him, and he can tell it from the news. The stocks being traded now are extremely scattered, and the pursuit is not big profits, but intraday arbitrage. It was okay at first, and his instructions basically met expectations. However, something was getting more and more wrong at this time, and all the instructions were not responded to. This means that the trader simply did not do what he asked for. The same is true for a sum of funds he operated himself, which was far less than expected. Not to mention that he didn't make any money, the situation also went against his plan. It was clear that other funds were eyeing him. Not just targeting a certain amount of his funds, but all of his funds. He couldn't think of anyone else besides Morgan. The question is Morgan full? My own funds are so dispersed. It is rare for a single ticket to have more than $20 million. Most of them are playing with several million dollars. A company as big as Morgan really has no shame, right? Can you see your own data and copy your own operations? Withdraw some funds first and wait for the situation. He gave the order. The funds are too dispersed, and there is no chance to take a chance with Morgan. The trader on Li Yuan's side started to get busy. Just a minute later, A trader said, "Boss, there are funds competing against us. The other party seems to know that we are going to withdraw, and they have been pulling in. There are a lot of scattered short orders on Li Yuan's side. If the opponent pulls up 3 to 5 points in a short period of time, Li Yuan will lose a few points. Close long orders first." I quickly received feedback, "Boss, the long order has also encountered the opponent's hand. If it is tied now, it will lose 3 to 5 points. Settled. By the way, all the empty orders have been returned. It's just a loss of 3 to 5 points, which he can completely accept. In this situation, it would be unwise to play with the opponent. The other party didn't dare to pull or hit too hard. On the one hand, they didn't want to invest too much money, and on the other hand, they probably didn't want him to run away. Refine the ticket. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it." Author, Lao He. Chapter 244. The opponent's funds came so strangely that Li Yuan didn't feel like he could do it manually. But he can be sure that there must be Morgan's shadow behind this matter. Because there are only a few institutions that have the ability to check his chips, and he has only provoked Morgan so far. If Morgan added quantification, he wouldn't want to get entangled at all and would just leave. This kind of dispersed funds has no chance of winning when faced with quantification. If people dare to smash a few points or pull a few points openly, they must do it with confidence. The data from quantitative analysis cannot be seen with the naked eye. He started exchanging tickets. The funds that had just been cut off were immediately invested in new stocks. It's easy to cut off the meat, but it's a little difficult to squeeze in another $1 billion in a while, and it can't be done overnight. Anyway, this unexpected situation directly caused all his plans to be invalidated, and the time for liquidation was forced to be extended by at least a week. Comfort yourself, if you are bitten by a dog, you should never bite the dog. If you bite, you will be fooled. After all, the rabid dog disease inherited from Westerners is not a well-deserved reputation. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he stuffed another $300 million into it. It was really hard work. He basically found tickets on the spot and didn't choose them in advance, which made him very anxious. Some situations are inevitable, but overall it's pretty good. But the closer it got to the close, the more he felt something was wrong. There seems to be something wrong with the votes I selected later. Keep cutting. He gave the order. When the first amount of funds was directly cleared and withdrawn, other tickets suddenly began to have problems, and they were either pulled or smashed. He couldn't cut off even 1 or 2 points of flesh. If he wanted to run away now, he would have to cut off at least 3 or 5 points. This amplitude has been quantified and calculated to the point that if you don't cut it, you will be stabbed slowly, and if you get cut quickly, you will feel very unhappy. If there were accidents before, it is too blatant now. It is clear that there is a certain amount of quantitative funds specifically targeted at myself. He waited until the market closed at 5:30 in the morning and did not enter the market again. There's no way to play anymore. Someone can see your whole cards and not tell them, but they can also deal opponent cards to other people on the table, restraining you to death. It even made Li Yuan completely in no mood to think about the next thing. After closing, he left the company in silence. Yao Yingsong couldn't finish the 2 sentences he wanted to say. Later, when he had dinner with the trader, he asked the reason. The funds were severely attacked today, and the overall loss was close to 4 points. If Nvidia's $200 million hadn't been moved, today's loss would have been more than 5 points. The funds were sniped again, and Yao Yingsong had no choice but to tell his boss about it when writing the report. The leaders probably have no idea. After all, they are playing on someone else's territory. They are determined to cheat, and there are no tricks at all. After Li Yuan got home, he ate some food, washed briefly and went to bed. Zhang Yuling woke up, put his arms around his shoulders, and fell asleep again. Li Yuan also rubbed Zhang Yuling's hair, but he never fell asleep. About half an hour passed, and Zhang Yuling suddenly said, "Did something happen?" "Huh? No." Zhang Yuling said, "If not, you would have fallen asleep by now. I woke up when I heard your voice. I haven't reached the point where I've been pregnant for 3 years. Usually you look like a pig when you lie down. You can't wake up no matter what. Aren't you asleep? I want to wait for you to go to bed first. Then go to bed quickly." After Li Yuan finished speaking, he hugged her a little tighter, closed his eyes, and soon heard the sound of even breathing. Zhang Yuling didn't sleep. She could feel that Li Yuan was a little different today than before. "In the past, I was just busy and tired. I was still a little anxious today, otherwise I wouldn't have been lying down for so long without falling asleep. It's definitely not a trivial matter that can make him anxious." At around 9 o'clock, the National Fund also received a report from Yao Yingsong. There is no doubt that Li Yuan created the largest single-day decline since he started trading in person. The loss was not a lot, tens of millions of dollars, but the overall profit was still profitable. But this time the situation can be said to be the most desperate. It can be seen that Li Yuan has no more moves and has been forced to take beatings. When several leaders came to work, a meeting was held. The current market is indeed not good. Li Yuan can make profits for 2 consecutive weeks, which is considered very good. There is a high probability that our account is on someone's list. After all, we made more than $20 billion in Bitcoin last time, and they are determined to retaliate against us. How about changing an account? As long as the account is under the name of Qingtian Capital, I'm afraid it will be monitored, unless it is not placed under the name of Qingtian Capital. That will be troublesome to operate. Find an opportunity to ask Li Yuan. If there's really no other way, just liquidate it. At worst, we won't do it this year. Not doing it is also an option. However, in the meeting a year ago, a lot of expenditures were increased, and the capital budget for 005 was increased. The progress of 003 and 004 should also be improved a lot, and the pressure on follow-up funds will be greater. Because of Li Yuan's rise, they have increased a lot of military spending this year. Even if Li Yuan only does one issue this year, it would be acceptable to them, because it was based on this bottom line from the beginning. If there is none in one phase, the pressure will be greater next year, and it will take 2 phases to guarantee the minimum. Even according to the budget, to make up for the pension gap, more than 4 installments will have to be done next year. They don't doubt Li Yuan's ability, but they also have to see whether their opponents give him a chance. What if we are targeted again next year? What if you can't do it in the future? In that case, Li Yuan can only return to A shares, and the current size of A shares is not enough to support Li Yuan in grabbing a large amount of profits every year. Li Yuan's method of making money should look at the global market. Things get tricky. They also know that Morgan must be behind it, but where is the evidence? And even if there is evidence, it is useless. This kind of thing can be regarded as someone else's home field advantage, and the reason for condemnation is not sufficient. On the surface, outsiders thought they were making excuses. At this time, Yao Yingsong sent another message, which included an interception of a media report. It is a domestic social media. Li Yuan suffered a defeat on Wall Street and lost hundreds of millions of dollars in a single day. Will the richest man change hands this year? The words supposedly, reliable sources revealed and maybe are used throughout the content. This group of domestic media have really become lackeys of Western capital. Someone slapped the table and cursed angrily. Some people frowned and said nothing. There is no doubt that the news must have been released by Wall Street, otherwise who would know about it? The report is in their hands. The heartbreaking thing about this matter is that it is impossible for them to disclose the financial statements because the financial statements show losses. If the report is profitable and used to restore Li Yuan's reputation, they don't care much. After all, many people know that Li Yuan is trading in the international market, but they have not disclosed the specific data. But now the reports show compensation, but not as much as reported in the news. Taking them out will only confirm what the media said. Doesn't a loss of $60 million count as a loss? What's the difference between losing more than $100 million? Something that cannot be proven can only be pretended not to have seen. As for the media, there is really nothing they can do, because if you target one company, more will jump out. Unless it's a very serious matter that's serious enough to be punished, everyone can be silenced. This matter obviously does not reach that level. It is just gossip and not rigorous. It's no longer just a day or two for the media to make bad money in the West, and those in the media also know where the bottom line is for spreading rumors. They usually spread rumors about ordinary people, social events, and misinterpret the words of certain experts to gain traffic. They don't dare to talk about real big events. Criminal liability is obviously not suitable for things like this, and the punishment measures are not so clear, so we can only pretend that we have not seen it. Secretly, they were on Li Yuan's side. But on the surface, there is no way to take sides. Taking sides is equivalent to admitting that Li Yuan was trading Bitcoin for them, and they were the ones acting in the audience. The main reason is that there are many places to spend money in China, and there is no money for those media. If we can also spend tens of billions of dollars every year on public relations for global media, our reputation in the world will not be so bad. When will we have currency globalization? We won't care about the little money anymore. It's too early to think about this now. The current situation is, what will Li Yuan think when he sees these reports? Will he think that if we don't stand up to clear his name, we are afraid of trouble or trying to get rid of him? That shouldn't be the case, right? As for whether or not, it is an attitude after all. When Li Yuan wakes up, call him and ask his opinion first. If you really want us to stand up, we seem to have no other choice. Well, domestic media spreads quickly. After one company started reporting, other media outlets followed suit because they received money. It was originally a trivial matter, but it suddenly became a hot search topic. It has almost become public knowledge. After Li Yuan woke up, he saw Zhang Yuling typing on his cell phone. I looked over and saw that he was scolding some anti-fans. It is said that Li Yuan is worth hundreds of billions, and if he loses 1 billion a day, he will lose hundreds of days. Zhang Yuling found Li Yuan approaching and quickly put away his phone. He asked sheepishly, "You didn't see it, did you?" "I saw it. Didn't you just say that I lost money? Aren't you angry? They haven't sent out the manuscript yet, and I already know what they will write. Those media should thank me. Without me, no one would be willing to give them money." Li Yuan didn't care what those people said, it was useless anyway. He has not yet developed his own personality and does not have control over his own right to speak in the media. Pour money into the mouths of a group of media people who have no bottom line? Save it, you might as well donate it. Then I will continue to scold them for a while. My anger is not gone yet. Zhang Yuling stopped hiding it and continued to take out his mobile phone and started looking for relevant news. Whenever he saw anti-fans, he started to criticize them. She also knows that doing so does not have much practical significance, but she must provide some emotional value to Li Yuan, otherwise she will be too useless. As soon as Li Yuan sat down next to the sofa, Zhou Wan brought some porridge over. Dinner will have to wait until after 7 o'clock, and Li Yuan has just woken up, so it would be better to eat something light. Li Yuan said while eating, "Mom, I won't be back tomorrow." "You don't have to wake up so early. Sleep a little longer." Zhou Wan immediately said, "Where are you going if you don't come back?" "The company hired a physical therapist with a high salary. I should have gone there a long time ago. I was worried that you would be worried, so I didn't go there. With a physical therapist, staying up late will not have a great impact on the body. Is that thing reliable? Mom, I am a physical therapist with an annual salary of several million. She uses the most scientific methods and has rich professional knowledge. I guarantee that there will be no problems with my body. Don't worry. My mother had been worried for 2 weeks before, and Li Yuan was not going to continue like this. Take the reassurance you need to take. Zhou Wan may not understand other things, but Zhou Wan understands when it comes to annual salary of several million. If you don't have any strength, how can you have the dignity to get an annual salary of millions? Then you should have gone a long time ago. Why don't you enjoy it after spending money? Then remember to call me if you need anything. Sometimes you can't get through, just send me a voice message on WeChat, and I'll reply as soon as I see it. And, if you want anything, just call Yuling directly. I understand, then you have to come back on Sunday, right? I'll definitely go back. I'll do it on Saturday night. I'll leave on Monday night. I can stay at home for 2 nights. Zhou Wan didn't say anything else. Anyway, just wait a week and see what happens. Let's see if that $1 million physical therapist is of any use. Li Yuan ate something and went to the study. After replying a few messages, I received a call from the National Fund. Li Yuan, you have worked hard during this time. I am also making money for myself. You are too polite. What do you want from me? It's not a big deal, it's just that some media said some unpleasant things, so I want to ask you, do you need us to stand up and help you clarify it? As long as we stand up, things should calm down. Li Yuan smiled and said, but don't, I am gaining fans. Now everyone in the country knows that there is a person like me. I have to catch the traffic that is pouring down on me. When you became the richest man, people all over the country already knew about it. To deepen my impression, I now have more than 80 million fans on the entire internet. If I can't survive in the future, I will rely on these fans to survive. You really don't want us to come forward? No, I'm not a child anymore. I can't just cry and shout to my parents to get back my place every time I'm beaten outside. What do you mean? I'll find my own place. He couldn't sleep last night, so he just thought about the whole thing, and the more he thought about it, the more angry he became. Isn't it just Morgan plus quantification? They were the first to be shameless, and they no longer had to follow the rules. No matter how awesome quantification is, it is not without its weaknesses. The last time I competed with quantitative was in Tianchuan shares. Although the scene was completely different from now, he was not the main combatant at that time. But in the end, doesn't the quantification still have to be taken over manually? After waking up, he made a decision. Let's have a serious battle with quantification. Even if the opponent knows all his cards. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 245. People who set the pace on the internet have been trying to destroy the myth of Li Yuan, because Li Yuan has become too popular in the past 6 months or so. Rumors have even begun to appear that when Li Yuan enters the A-share market, it will mean the arrival of the A-share bull market. This kind of rumor is very scary, and it means that the amount of funds he can mobilize is terrifying. In the securities market, whoever can mobilize the flock can control the market. Western countries have cultivated stock gods, and using the name of the stock gods, they have made countless harvests around the world. It is absolutely impossible for them to give up the title of stock god to others. Once Li Yuan is really dubbed the god of stocks, it will gradually become recognized over time. As long as he opens his mouth, he can directly determine the life or death of a market. For example, in the island country next door, the manufacturing, semiconductor, and automotive electronics industries are all in decline. They have trade deficits every year, and their currency has been depreciated wildly in exchange for export share. The overall economy can be said to be miserable. But just one word from the stock god can bring the Nikkei index up, making it easier for capital to be harvested. Many people on Wall Street knew that Morgan was behind the scenes to set up Li Yuan, and they were all happy to see this happening, and could even help secretly. There can only be one stock god in this world, and that is under the Western capital system. Is Li Yuan worthy? The trading room was as usual. When Li Yuan came over, Yao Yingsong was chatting with the trader. He also went over to join in the fun for a while, and the topic of conversation was very eccentric. The financial circle is actually an abnormal circle, and it is very chaotic. After all, a group of high-paid people are exposed to a lot of money all day long. Qingtian Capital's dividends are relatively small. If there is a big market situation, the amount of dividends paid by other financial companies can be 10 times that of Qingtian Capital. Fund managers can sometimes even receive tens of millions. Then he will definitely take his people out to have a party. The group of traders around Li Yuan will not be idle as long as they are on holiday. Fall in love? Some people do, but most people don't really fall in love, and even if they do, they're still scumbags. They usually secrete too much adrenaline and have no interest in ordinary things. This is called addiction. It is inevitable for women to be included in the topic. Some people even said that they wanted to learn from Li Yuan, either about how to fall in love or how to pick up girls. Li Yuan has a fart experience. In his previous life, he was a licker. In this life, he just wants to make money. I have never had a serious love affair. What sweetness! He really doesn't understand what you and I are talking about. After all, he was the richest man, so he couldn't reveal his privacy, so he tactfully criticized those guys who were not doing their jobs properly, said things that went against their will, and advised them to work hard to save money and find a down-to-earth girl to get married. Maybe people have bad natures. For example, if you hear a technician say that your father is a gambler, your mother is sick, and your younger brother is in school, you will feel compassion. When I see a pure and lovely girl, I hope she is someone who needs a benefactor father. Persuading prostitutes to be good and forcing good people to become prostitutes is a contrast that dominates human nature. When the market was about to open, everyone entered the trading room, and all previous topics were terminated. Li Yuan took a look at his account. It was originally $1.8 billion. Yesterday, he lost more than $60 million, leaving only a little over $1.7 billion. Nvidia currently holds a position of $230 million, and the remaining funds are around $1.5 billion. In more than 2 weeks, I earned some Nvidia stock. In fact, the record is also brilliant, but the previous starting point was too high, and now it seems a bit bleak. After the market opened, Li Yuan said, "Today's goal is $200 million. Enter Nvidia, just this one ticket, play casually during the market, and increase the trading volume. Remember, there is a fund staring at us and doing it with us. Opponent played. Nothing else is needed. As long as the trading volume is good, today is considered a good day." With the layout here, the quantitative funds on the other side of the Atlantic are confused. Quantitative has been tracking the funds of Qingtian Capital, and after discovering that they entered Nvidia, they rushed in as soon as possible. Qingtian Capital is long, and quantitative funds are short. Then, Nvidia, which has a market value of more than $90 billion, was suddenly quantitatively smashed down by 5 or 6 points. When Morgan found out, they found that quantitative investment had already invested more than $1 billion. At this moment, Mondale was a little confused. This damn quantification program, everything else is fine, but it gives too much authority. Just throw billions of dollars into it? He immediately talked to the other party, and half an hour later, the other party convinced him. The other party's meaning is obvious. Even if Nvidia's market value is relatively high, even if they have relatively large funds to enter the market, since they dare to do the quantitative program, they must be sure to get out of it. This operation must be calculated through quantitative procedures, and short selling is profitable. So Mondale doesn't need to worry. Mondale did not put down his worries, but went to check the positions of Qingtian Capital. Now he only holds a position in Nvidia stock. It seems that Li Yuan has realized that someone is targeting him. That's why I chose a large cap stock so that quants wouldn't dare to stop it. After all, there are not many internal funds in small cap stocks, and strong funds are even more limited. Basically, quantification can seize the opportunity to withdraw. But the situation in large cap stocks is very complicated and involves more interests. A few points of decline involves all the profits of small cap stocks, and no one will allow this situation to occur. Mondale felt much better looking at Nvidia, which held a position of $430 million in option capital. After all, Qingtian Capital has $400 million to accompany it. As long as he continues to cut Li Yuan's flesh, it doesn't matter if he loses some money. There is nothing more difficult for a financial institution to accept than losing money. Well, now there is. That is to make your opponent make money. Seeing that Qingtian Capital was making money in the US stock market, Mondale felt that his resume was being repeatedly ravaged. Moreover, attacking Qingtian Capital and Li Yuan is currently the unspoken rule of the entire Wall Street. He decided to contact other organizations and have a good chat with them about this matter. Especially those institutions that hold Nvidia, let them tolerate it for a few days. As long as Li Yuan cuts off his flesh, they can continue to suppress Li Yuan. With Morgan's reputation, they will definitely give it. After all, everyone eats from the same bowl, and they won't break their heads because of petty gains. In the early morning of Wednesday, Yao Yingsong sorted out the report. He did not do a lot of operations that day, or he was doing Nvidia over and over again, and he did not make any money. He lost us $860,000. If you remove the handling fee, it is almost no loss. This data is enough to show that Li Yuan has been completely affected. There is currently no solution but to enter the big ticket to avoid it. But this situation cannot last forever. If we can't find a solution, we have to withdraw first. He passed the report to his boss and received the same instructions. At this time, Li Yuan was enjoying Chen Ji's massage comfortably. The whole person felt extremely comfortable. After all, after struggling for more than half a month and getting nothing, even if the body was not exhausted, the mind would be exhausted. Chen Ji is wearing a thin sweater. Different from the more formal dress before, she is now dressing up at home. After all, Li Yuan suddenly said he was coming over and didn't even call her yesterday. She had almost no room to go out. The farthest she could walk was to buy groceries at the supermarket in front of the community. If she was a little further away, the rings on her wrists and ankles would identify her, and she would receive a reminder call. At this time, having any random thoughts is completely unnecessary and irrational. Just wait patiently until you can take off these two rings. Li Yuan squinted his eyes and asked, "Sister Chen, I will live here with you from now on. Do you have a room? Well, you come and sleep in my room. Then Sister Chen sleeps with me. Chen Ji. This world, Sci-fi. I will sleep when you go to work. The time can be staggered." Li Yuan said, "Isn't that bed too hard? It is open 24 hours a day. If the bed is conscious, it will definitely feel like a vegetative person has slept on it, or it will feel like a bus bed, and this guest is gone. The next guest will be seamlessly connected." This is a bad joke. Although it was cold, Chen Ji showed a rare smile. There are not many people in this world who are willing to tell jokes to her. Li Yuan put aside the previous topic and suddenly asked, Sister Chen, do you think it would be difficult if I wanted to acquire Nvidia? Nvidia? Yes, it is a semiconductor company. Its current market value is more than $90 billion. It is considered a favorite of Wall Street and has the potential to become the new darling of Wall Street. Large institutions on Wall Street generally rarely do small ticket trading because small ticket trading cannot hold much capital. If you can have a certain foundation in the US stock market, you will become the target of large institutions. In the future, the market value will easily exceed US $500 billion and US $1 trillion. Wall Street will build up the stocks they value to be watertight. Even if Apple's market value exceeds $3 trillion, no one will think it is a bubble. After all, the company has more than $200 billion in cash and can earn tens of billions of dollars every year. But in fact, Apple does not pay any dividends. Although it pays dividends several times a year, they are actually only 1 or 2 cents. It is equivalent to buying Moutai in a shares, and you will be given 4 cents per share a year. Although the stock price has been rising, in Li Yuan's view, Apple stock has no investment value at all. It does not necessarily mean that more dividends are good, and the US stock market is not a dividend market. But participating in it is equivalent to carrying the sedan chair for others, and the big capital behind it controls everything. You can make money in the long term, but you just happen to be on the long-term plan of big capital, and you don't hold much, so it doesn't affect the interests of those big capitals. In essence, A shares have more investment value, while US stocks have purely speculative value. It's just that most people who play A shares ignore the function of dividends, because dividends require X rights and X dividends, which is like using their own money to distribute dividends to themselves. In fact, there are many companies that can make huge profits by paying dividends, as long as they can get it. Bank stocks are well known and have the largest number of participants. In fact, there are some stocks that the Social Security Fund participates in that are also good, such as Syngene Pharmaceutical, which can pay out an average of 10 points of dividends every year. In theory, if you hold it for 8 years, your capital will be returned, and the market value of the shares is a pure profit. As the US dollar continues to overissue, the beautiful country has an increasing demand for the reservoir of the stock market. Wall Street has a great demand for large companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and these companies need to bear more funds to avoid their own funds shrink. But pushing it to $2 to $3 trillion is already the limit, so they need to keep looking for new companies. And they often choose industries where it is easy to capture the pie, and then use a series of means to allow the selected companies to receive most of the industry's dividends and create higher profit margins and industry prospects. Otherwise, it will be difficult to increase the market value, raise to hundreds of billions or even trillions of dollars. Chen Ji thought for a while and said, the West will probably not give you a chance. Even if you get the stock, they will use off-market means to deny your operation. Li Yuan knew that it would be impossible to win with his status. He continued, is there any foreign company that is very interested in Nvidia? The requirement is that it is a large company with pure Western blood. Chen Ji. What does Li Yuan want to do? He doesn't think he can get Nvidia shares, does he? If it is a purely financial operation, then even if you get all the tickets in circulation by Nvidia, it will only be about 20%, because the tickets in the hands of those large institutions will not be sold. There should be. Western capital is not monolithic. When some institutions work together to tap resources, other institutions can't even drink the soup. Their internal competition is also very fierce. After all, there is not much external funds, and the increase in funds in the entire market is still there. They rely on their own people. Well, Li Yuan sighed. In fact, why not A shares? With a scale of 50 trillion, foreign investment is actually only 200 to 300 billion, and most of the funds belong to the Chinese people themselves. But they are being led by the nose by a mere 2 to 300 billion foreign capital. To put it bluntly, there is a problem with domestic institutions. They are all useless trash at heart and like to take advantage of others. Even those who have some backbone have no choice but to follow the general trend. Too shrewd, so shrewd that he cares about every little profit and doesn't even think about the overall situation. As long as they think about it, it will be difficult for the property market to reach this point. Anyway, the current property market is already in trouble, and the stock market, the successor, has not even laid a solid foundation. What's wrong? Chen Ji didn't know what Li Yuan meant by sighing inexplicably, and it seemed like they didn't talk about anything that could make him sigh, right? It's okay, it's okay. Please help me look for it, Sister Chen. If there is a suitable organization, tell me. Don't be in a hurry to contact them. We'll wait until I make arrangements here. Chen Ji's eyes widened. Do you really want to acquire Nvidia? Let's try it. What if it succeeds? Chen Ji said seriously, as long as you can get enough stocks, I can help you sell them to others. But others will not keep it secret for you, and you will offend many people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 246. Of course Li Yuan knew that he would offend many people, because he was not robbing one person's job, but the job of a large group of people. Among them are some of the world's top conglomerates such as Goldman Sachs and Morgan. It is not easy for them to find a ticket, and the layout takes a long time, and they have to wait for the opportunity. Any ticket with a market value of trillions is not generated out of thin air. There are countless capital promoters behind it. Those capitals are not a good thing, and they can even kill Li Yuan. Li Yuan knew that Chen Ji had connections in this area. After all, what she did was related to money. Even if it is not a direct contact, it is not a problem if we are connected through one or two levels of relationships. I don't have it in my hands right now. We'll tell you when we have it. Why do you have to think about it? Everyone is the same. Sister Chen, haven't you ever thought about it? There's no way I can go. Me too. People were looking at his back door all day long, and even quantitative funds were sent to follow him, so he had no way out. Won't you let me poop on your Wall Street property? Then I will smash your toilet. No one can pull it off. Originally, after he pulled it, the other party rinsed it with water, which did not affect subsequent use. As a result, in order to prevent themselves from pulling, they placed inverted thumbtacks around the toilet, and they started to pierce their buttocks as soon as they squatted down. Grass. As a living person, how can he stop shitting? This is sincerely asking him to pull it out of his pocket. For someone who loves cleanliness so much, he would definitely not want to do it. Some people rebelled because they lost their jobs at the post station, and they worked hard because they couldn't poop. It's reasonable and reasonable. Slowly, he fell asleep. Slept well. I don't know if it's because Chen Ji's quilt smells so good or because I'm just too tired. After waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Chen Ji prepared food, just like at home. Has Chen Ji never rested? Well, I called some people and asked about your classmate. How's it going? Chen Ji went abroad after the Lantern Festival, but Li Yuan never contacted him. After all, everything that needs to be explained has been packaged into documents and sent to him. He has never been abroad very much. In his last life, he went to several nearby countries with the company. After a few rounds, he lost interest. One piece of good news, one piece of bad news. Then say yes, I don't like hearing bad news. Chen Ji smiled and said, "The good news is that he went through the whole process very smoothly. The bad news is that he went to South America." That guy Chen Chi directly challenged the hell difficulty. In fact, there are currently only 2.5 places in the world where raw materials are produced that can still maintain exports. South America, Africa, Woolly Bear. After all, making money from raw materials is the most primitive stage and the stage where the least money is made. What really makes money is the processing and sales links. It's just that these places don't have enough industrial capacity to deeply process raw materials, let alone manufacture finished products, so they can only export. Of course, furry bears are an exception. Their economy is too poor. Although their industry is very strong, new industries cannot keep up after the generation of talents is exhausted. Coupled with its relatively rich resources, exporting raw materials has become a good option to supplement the economy. The resources there have basically been divided up by the West. If they want to rob them, they may not even be able to leave the bodies. On the contrary, in Africa, although a large part of it is occupied by the West, there are still some unoccupied shares. Did Chen Chi not know, or did it on purpose? Forget it, never mind, even if he died anyway, he would just lose a few million. It's not like I didn't introduce the situation to him, and he's not illiterate and doesn't even know the words. After Li Yuan had something to eat, he asked Chen Ji for a notebook and began to check the situation of Nvidia. The current stock price of Nvidia is $193, with a total share capital of more than 400 million shares. It fell 4 points yesterday. Even though there has been a lot of damage on the quantitative side, the overall commitment is still very strong. Tonight is still about testing the waters. But he doesn't need to go to the company, he can just make a phone call to arrange it. In short, we will increase the trading volume according to yesterday's operation. Nvidia's average daily transaction volume is around $2.2 billion, and yesterday's transaction volume hit a new high in half a month, reaching $2.5 billion. From this figure, we can see that a lot of funds have been used quantitatively, which may reach $1 billion. Try to increase the trading volume to $3 billion today. His instructions to the traders were very simple: $200 million, which could be traded slowly during the day or repeatedly. From time to time, he would spend tens of millions of US dollars in large sums. If there was a profit, he would not make any money. If there was no profit, he would put back the funds that had come out before. Quantification was attacking him, so he threw himself into the trap and tried it. After eating something at around 8 o'clock, Chen Ji went to bed, while Li Yuan wrapped a blanket and sat on the sofa to wait. Now that Yao Yingsong is here, he can contact Yao Yingsong directly. And his main role is to pick up leaks. Hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in chips began to be picked up. The purpose of quantification is to eat up his money, and if he keeps covering his position, theoretically quantification will keep losing money. But the quantification side is very measured in their efforts. They don't say they will hit a dozen points, but only 3 or 4 points to ensure sufficient operating space. Even if Li Yuan was willing to smash all his chips and leave the field, they would not stop him, because the program was not designed to beat him to death with a stick, as that would be too risky. Li Yuan doesn't know yet whether the quantification has other functions, but that's all for now. It's not too clever, it's just annoying to pester people. He just didn't bother with the other party before. Now, he seems to be struggling and does not want to lose such a large profit, so after the quantitative hit, he covers his position and tries to play with funds. Quantification is also done very simply, because Nvidia itself has risen a lot in January. The current decline is within the adjustment range, and the downward pressure is sufficient. As long as there is enough subsequent participation, it will not be quantified. What a difficult task. After all, in order to deal with Li Yuan, the quantitative side adjusted the program value to be able to withstand losses within 10 points. Early Thursday morning, it was almost closing. Li Yuan unknowingly discovered that he had picked up $600 million in chips. More than expected. There is no doubt that Qingtian Capital has lost money. It lost almost $20 million today. After Li Yuan woke up, the rhythmic voices of the media appeared on the internet again. According to well-known sources, Li Yuan has suffered losses in the US stock market for 3 consecutive days, and his loss today is close to $100 million again. Even Li Yuan's fans began to leave messages strongly urging Li Yuan to come out and clarify. After all, some people couldn't accept Li Yuan's repeated defeats. In their eyes, Li Yuan was overly mythical. Otherwise, why would there be such a group as the Rice Circle? Even if Li Yuan does not take the initiative to manage the fandom culture, this culture will still penetrate into his fan base. Or maybe it's the same all over the world. There will always be some people who are proud of their idols and feel that everything their idols do is the same as what they do. Li Yuan couldn't say anything. After all, his own brokerage must be behind this matter, and they leaked the information internally. But this brokerage has provided a lot of channels for the country, and it's not worth it to fall out because of this nonsense. They didn't announce the specific positions, they just leaked a little bit of the results. He found an emoticon on the internet, which showed a celebrity pointing a knife at someone, and added text. Will this melon stay ripe? Then sent it out. It means questioning the content and data of the articles published by the media. He will definitely not admit that he has been losing money. Even if he finally makes money, it will be different to his fans. He must create a persona that he has never lost money. Even if he loses money one day, he must make money every day. It seems very hypocritical, but in fact, which character in the world is not hypocritical? Isn't it hypocritical for a celebrity to watch stray dogs bite people with a cold eye, while at the same time mercifully calling out stray dogs on the internet for being human beings? If you really have that intention, you can take the lead in setting up a fund, and each of the celebrities who speak out will give 1 million. This amount of money shouldn't be much for the top people like them, right? Even if you reimburse the cost of vaccination and treatment for stray dog bites. No matter what happens, it doesn't cost any money to go to the hospital to visit her, right? Anyway, it's okay to make appeals, because appeals can create a persona and earn traffic. Is there really no way to spend money and time? Li Yuan's understatement in his response gave fans an excuse. Many people began to question the authenticity of the media. Where can the media go to confirm this? They can only wait for evidence from Wall Street. But now Wall Street is dumping evidence, which is a bit different from the reports, and it's not shocking enough. All we can do is wait. Wall Street is not afraid of Li Yuan's counterattack, and the more counterattack the better. As long as they present enough evidence, the harder Li Yuan fights back, the faster his character will collapse. And evidence takes time. According to Li Yuan's current methods, he will only lose more and more in the future. If you lose 20 million today, you will lose 30 million tomorrow, you will lose 40 million the day after tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Oh, no, the day after tomorrow. US stocks will be closed the day after tomorrow. Wall Street still reports that Li Yuan is losing money every day, but they don't release specific figures. Because a mere tens of millions of dollars is not shocking enough. And before you know it, the third week of the third phase of the fund is over. On Saturday morning, Li Yuan looked at the $3.5 billion in chips he had absorbed and went out with satisfaction. Starting from Thursday, Qingtian Capital began to increase leverage. Using $20 million every day to leverage 10 times, it looks like he is fighting against quantitative funds. It is still easy to be bullied when you are long, but the quantitative side is still playing it safe and does not do risky things. But there is no doubt that since Qingtian Capital took leverage, the attitude of the quantitative side has become more determined, because it is impossible for Li Yuan to successfully escape. Smash it slowly, and one day it will explode. Suddenly throwing out a large amount of chips will cause too much money to pour in, and you will definitely lose money quantitatively by then. After all, the most essential logic of quantification is to make money. Slowly smashing the market and making a downward trend is likely to drive short-selling funds in the market to join in, which is still a strong boost for quantification. Li Yuan left Chen Ji's residence early in the morning and went to Xu Yanlin's place instead. I haven't seen him for over a month, and I still miss him a bit. After going there, I saw that some of the New Year decorations in the room were still there, and I knew that Xu Yanlin should have a good New Year. Anna Shen was forced to get up to wash up, change clothes, and open the door. After all, Li Yuan did not notify Xu Yanlin. After sleeping at Xu Yanlin's side, he didn't come back until 5 or 6 in the afternoon. He felt refreshed. After all, Chen Ji had made him sleep very comfortably in the past few days. He would never be able to sleep so soundly at home. Anxiety will make him dream more and sleep less. After Zhou Wan looked at Li Yuan's complexion, she slowly began to recognize the conditioner in her heart. He really deserved an annual salary of several million. Li Yuan had a great time this weekend. But Wall Street is busier. In order to ensure that this attack on Qingtian Capital was foolproof, every operation of Qingtian Capital was analyzed repeatedly. Mondale did not dare to slack off at all, just to ensure that there would be no problems this time. The quantitative side has already been levered up, and Mondale also contacted the capital behind Nvidia and reached an agreement with each other. During the stage when he was trading to suppress Qingtian Capital, those people would not take action to increase the price. Of course it is possible to smash the market, but no one will do it. Mondale also sorted out the chips in the hands of the brokerage and estimated how many short contracts he could open. Recently, a lot of short-selling funds have been introduced into the market, and some of the chips in the hands of securities companies have been taken away. However, there is no problem in opening more than $10 billion in the future. Nvidia's stock price has dropped 24 points from its peak on Monday. According to their calculations, Qingtian Capital intends to use leverage to forcefully hold down the stock price. After all, Qingtian Capital only has more than $1 billion in hand. As long as it can hold on, quantitative will be under pressure to repay short orders. This is Li Yuan's plan. If he is unwilling to take the initiative to cut off his flesh, this is the only way. According to this budget, if Qingtian Capital can hold on for at most half a month, it may face a full liquidation. Because the capital invested there every day from now on will be doubled or even tripled from the previous day. Otherwise, if it drops by 4 or 5 points every day, the long orders at the beginning will be liquidated one after another, and the additional contract margin will not be satisfied. After 10 trading days, you will naturally see the result. Mondale has been preparing to capture a data with a relatively large loss and break Li Yuan's personality in one fell swoop. It is unlikely that Li Yuan will go bankrupt this time, but his personality as a stock god will never be remembered in this life. Mondale also noticed the phenomenon of chips being taken away from short orders on the market, which seemed normal to him. After all, those capitals knew that Nvidia would definitely rise. Cooperating with Morgan to suppress the stock price for such a long time, they made a lot of money less. Taking advantage of this short period, without raising the stock price, they took some cheap chips and regarded it as the interest during this period. Very reasonable. He even asked several institutions, but several institutions agreed. They did take a small amount of chips, but they did so without raising the stock price. Mondale was relieved. Anyway, as long as Qingtian Capital liquidates his position, he believes that those institutions will take out their chips and let him repay the short contract. After all, everyone will make money this time. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 247. It's also March. Most of the cold weather has passed, and occasionally the temperature can reach 25 or 6 degrees during the day. Jo Wan has lived in big cities before, but what used to be survival has now become life. She made up for her regret of not having a daughter in Zhongyuling. It's just that she feels that the young couple is a little weird. When we are together, we are all around each other, and we don't seem to care much when we are apart for a long time. She wanted to ask, but thinking that Zhongyuling's delivery date was getting closer, it felt inappropriate. The cleanliness and tidiness of the big city made her very comfortable. She didn't like the countryside either. There were chicken, duck, and goose droppings everywhere. If she hadn't bought too many chickens last time, she would never have wanted to raise chickens in the yard. Occasionally I think about Li Wanhee and how hard it is for him to be busy going back and forth alone. But only occasionally. After all, life in a big city is convenient, and my daughter-in-law is more important, so I don't have so much free time to think about him. The fourth week of the third phase of the fund came unknowingly. Li Yuan came to the company on Monday afternoon. In fact, the company can control remotely, but he can't go out and walk directly to Chenji, while his mother is still watching at the door. Maybe no one cares whether what they tell is the truth, but they can't act and not act. Simply come to the company first and go back later. After the market opened, the trader operated according to his instructions. He looked at the market for a while and found that the quantitative side was obviously much more cautious. After all, so many short orders had been opened, and the risk was gradually increasing. The same is true for Qingtian Capital, which means that leverage has been increasing. An additional 200 million chips were added last Tuesday, another 200 million on Wednesday, an additional 300 million on Thursday, and an additional 400 million on Friday. The current holdings are $1.3 billion, of which 1 billion are leveraged funds. Because there are more than 200 million that are not leveraged, the stock price will basically be liquidated as long as the stock price drops another 5 or 6 points. But there is still money in the Qingtian Capital account. The money left behind is just to attract quantitative bait. However, quantitative funds are still much more cautious than people. After all, everyone will have emotions. There is no such thing as emotion in the program. After analysis, they know that they have to be careful at this position and cannot stop hitting 4 or 5 points as before. For example, I only hit 2 points today. Li Yuan initially thought of only covering his position of $100 million, with the attitude that he would not enter the market unless the other party made a profit, forcing the other party to continue to open short orders. But then I thought about it, the traces of this are too obvious, and the other party may not be fooled. Simply let nature take its course and move forward according to the strategy of preserving life. As long as you reveal your proactive intentions, others will not take the bait. It's like being a goddess that the other person likes. If you rush to book a room with them, they might still be afraid. But if you keep refusing when others chase you, but leave a little chance, they will chase you next time. After a long illness, he became a good doctor. Anyway, that was how Tong Sui treated him in his previous life. The shameless things in the world are always the same. Wait until 3 o'clock in the morning, directly enter the market with 500 million yuan, and force the price to increase. Remember, as long as the price stabilizes after the increase, you will immediately start to run away on a small scale. Li Yuan explained the details and left the trading room. If he doesn't get enough chips, the final result is meaningless. Under a quantitative design, it is unlikely that you will make money. Not even an income transfer like last time was possible. The funds on both sides are the same, equivalent to a sum of funds, and there is almost no direction in which they can cooperate with each other. Even if he shows the $30 billion in that account, don't even think about how much money he will make on the market. Someone will crush him to death at all costs. After returning to his residence, Li Yuan began to eat chips in small batches. Even if the position in his account exceeds 5%, it will not trigger a raise, because each fund in it is an independent part, and when put together, it is more like countless people acting in concert. This is the hidden method of black money all over the world. It requires a lot of manpower and material resources to track every money in order to lock the account. It is only theoretically possible to do it, but in fact it is as unrealistic as hand-carving high-performance chips. He just made hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this small amount of money would not be noticed by anyone. It's just a bit more hard work, mixed in with the increased trading volume, and not so conspicuous. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he stopped. According to his operation, Qingtian Capital directly spent $500 million, forcibly pulling the stock price from 3 points below the water to 1 point above the water. There was no movement on the quantitative side for the first time, and a lot of wait-and-see funds rushed in. After all, Nvidia has retreated for so long, and there is no bad news on the market. Now that big funds are entering the market to boost prices, it looks like it will start a second wave of market prices. Nvidia is different from those small cap stocks that hide in dark corners. Even if the stock price doubles, it will be difficult to gather popularity in the short term, and even international funds will not even take a look. A lot of international funds are eyeing stocks like Nvidia, and those international funds like to play long term. Now that they have fallen out of a gold pit, the holding cost for them is even lower. If they randomly come to a few companies and invest a few million or tens of millions of dollars, the entire amount of funds will increase all of a sudden. This situation is more beneficial to Li Yuan. Even if it is quantified, it is impossible to judge more accurate data. Qingtian Capital lay down and did tea, although it didn't make much money. After all, after the quantitative discovery of this point, they immediately began to suppress it to prevent Qingtian Capital from doing a lot of tea in this position and taking profits. In the end, Qingtian Capital closed tens of millions of dollars and made a profit of $4 to $5 million. The overall investment has still increased. With an extra $500 million in capital, we only made a profit of $4 to $50 million. In fact, we lost money. Otherwise, quantification would not be so fierce. Li Yuan took advantage of the quantitative slump and took 2 big bites. The 2 funds added up to $100 million. Nvidia's current share price is only $63 billion, and $100 million is a considerable bargaining chip. He currently holds 6.83% of Nvidia's total share capital, which is still far from the target. The stock price was once again hit 3 points below water. After seemingly struggling for a while, Qingtian Capital gave up on its next move, and the two sides reached a stalemate. Qingtian Capital is a very risky operation, and all subsequent funds have been highly leveraged. Today, it is equivalent to adding another $70 million. If it drops another 3 to 5 points tomorrow, we will have to invest almost $50 million to stay alive. The other party still has $1.3 billion, and he would rather lose all of it than let us succeed. Mondel's main job now is to keep an eye on Qingtian Capital's accounts. At this point, he had to sigh, Qingtian Capital is really ruthless. With such a high leverage, he dared to rush in without limit. If it weren't for the pursuit of insurance, he would have been blown up. It is precisely because of Qingtian Capital's methods that quantitative capital cannot make a big splash. After all, the lower the price, the less likely it is for Qingtian Capital to liquidate its position, as they still have more funds in hand. Once they have no more funds, things will be much easier to handle, and they can just stick to it for a short period of time. For Mondel, the current situation is not a big problem. The problem is that he has to start thinking about how to escape unscathed after beating Li Yuan. He can accept not making money, or even a small loss. But holding a short position worth billions of dollars, he felt uncertain. If the loss exceeds that of Li Yuan, even if this thing is successful, he will not be in a good mood. Those bastards will definitely eat up the biggest profits this time. They got too many cheap chips. Those chips were all thrown out by Morgan, which was equivalent to Morgan giving profits to those people. We can't give away too much profit. We have to find a way to make them spit out some. Mondale was already planning. If they don't cough up profits, they will definitely lose money. To suppress other funds in the financial market, if the risks cannot be fully shared, then they will definitely have to pay a high price to do so. Qingtian Capital is not a small player, they are very cruel and decisive. He called a familiar agency. Man, you are going to get rich this time. You are like the tasting girl, you have eaten so many Nvidia chips, I am going crazy with envy. Hey, Mondale, I don't have many chips here. No, you can't deceive me. So far, I have thrown away $6 billion in chips. Qingtian Capital has only taken over less than $2 billion, and the other $4 billion in chips have been eaten by you. Mondale knew there would be discrepancies in his data. For example, Qingtian Capital did not get that much. After all, Qingtian Capital had chips in its hands from the beginning. It's just that there are too many people participating, with large and small funds, and the overall calculation is not that easy. The chips that may be taken over far exceed $4 billion, because he can see from the short orders in the hands of major securities firms that during this period, many funds are following the trend and opening short orders, which adds up to more than $1 billion. Not to mention those small institutions, retail investors, and international investors who sell chips directly. It is impossible for large cap stocks to calculate every dollar, as long as they grasp the general direction. Oh my God, Mondale, do you know what you are talking about? Let alone $4 billion, we haven't even eaten $30 million here. After all, we have a lot of things now, and out of respect, we won't to cause trouble for you. Mondale. Okay, thanks old man. He didn't ask any more questions. The other party said that they didn't even get the $30 million in chips. Is it possible? The other institution manages hundreds of billions of dollars in assets. It is very possible that he guessed his intention and deliberately said that he did not get the chips. After all, this kind of top manager is fully capable of guessing his intentions the first time he calls. He started calling several other agencies. Then, his face changed and became ugly. All institutions use a set of rhetoric and don't have much leverage at all. Some people even said that they didn't even get 5 million. Isn't this a joke? What about the chips you smashed out? Could it be that he was eaten by a ghost? Nvidia is the ticket for these institutions to operate. How could they be willing to let others take away so many chips? He really refused to give up and finally called a small agency. The scale of that small organization is only over $10 billion, and it has little presence among this group of giants. However, he has a relatively strong background, so he can participate in the Nvidia Meat Sharing project. A few minutes later, Mondale felt bad after learning that the other party had taken $200 million. Those big institutions are playing tricks on him. In order to avoid asking them for a share of the profits, everyone pretends to be pitiful. He couldn't expose this kind of thing, let alone go through someone else's back door. After all, that would break the rules. If you can overturn others, they can also overturn you. He was going to wait and see. On Tuesday, Qingtian Capital invested us $500 million, and quantitative funds invested us $1.1 billion. The stock price is getting lower and lower, and the acceptance below is getting stronger and stronger. For Morgan, the price/performance ratio becomes lower the further it goes. On Wednesday, Qingtian Capital invested us $900 million, and quantitative funds invested us $1.6 billion. On this day, the critical point was reached. Because Qingtian Capital is just a little bit away from raising its name to Nvidia. The two sides fought fiercely. Nvidia once fell 10 points, but unfortunately it failed to fall in the end. After Yao Yingsong organized the report, he sent it to his boss. There is no doubt that a meeting has begun again. Li Yuan is in conflict with the opponent. He must protect his own funds at all costs. Once he raises his hand, he will become meat on someone else's chopping block. If we don't persuade him, we can just accept the loss. We won't lose much money in total. It only adds up to 2 to 3 billion US. We can definitely afford the loss. It seems that Li Yuan will not listen to us. If he wanted to cut off his flesh, he would have done so long ago. I'm afraid he will forcefully raise the flag this time. As long as he can keep the funds, there is a high probability that it can rise in the future. After all, Nvidia is different from other stocks. It's also possible that Wall Street will cut Nvidia apart and throw it away. These may all exist. Once the card is raised, it means that the chips are locked and can only be entered but not exited. It's useless no matter how much floating profit you make. If you have too much floating loss, you will have to make an unlimited margin call. They couldn't understand why Li Yuan always ended up losing tens of billions of dollars every time with only $1 billion in capital. In the current situation, once the other party is determined to fight to the end, the risk of loss will be very high for Li Yuan. That's 10 times leverage. Even if you go long, there is a theoretical possibility of losing 10 times. Wall Street can drive Nvidia's stock price to $1, and Li Yuan will lose 999.99%. Wait until Li Yuan's margin is added before raising the price. Li Yuan's money has already been put in anyway and he can't move it. The floating profit after the stock price rises has nothing to do with him. Before Li Yuan's stock restrictions are lifted, another runaway will be done and the mess will be left to Li Yuan. Of course, this is only a theoretical possibility. Even if the company Nvidia is turned into an empty shell, one share will not be worth only $1. Whenever Nvidia falls to its price at the beginning of last year, international funds will rush in like crazy. At the beginning of last year, Nvidia's stock price was $86. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 248. Mondale does not want Qingtian Capital to raise its cards. Originally, he thought that the sign-raising line would make Qingtian Capital afraid, and he might be able to defeat them by taking advantage of the opportunity. As a result, after a day of gaming, Qingtian Capital showed no signs of timidity at all. Raising placards has become a general trend. Once Qingtian Capital raises its cards, it will not be able to take over the other party's chips later. Of course, he must have thought of this before, and he will not give up just because Qingtian Capital wants to raise his hand. If Qingtian Capital didn't raise its cards, it would have lost less. Once Qingtian Capital raises its name, it will definitely lose 4 to 5 billion US. Because his goal is to push Nvidia's stock price to $100. No matter how powerful Qingtian Capital's subsequent replenishment is, under the superposition of 10 times the leverage, the position will still be liquidated. The current cost of Qingtian Capital is more than $150 US, and with subsequent additions, the cost may reach $130 US. If it hits $120, Prime Capital will liquidate its position. If it continues to drop, Prime Capital will have to make a margin call because his stock is restricted and cannot be liquidated, so it can only collect money off-site. At the price of $100 US, Qingtian Capital will lose 20 points. With the support of 10 times leverage, it will lose more than $3.5 billion US. In addition to the loss of about $7.7 billion when he liquidated his position, the total loss was more than $5 billion. If Qingtian Capital cannot take over the chips, Morgan will lose another sum of money. Today he tried to see if he could blow up Qingtian Capital, but Qingtian Capital finally added another 200 million in funds. For Mondale, how to minimize his losses this time has become the most important task at present. Qingtian Capital no longer needs to care. Once the sign is raised, the next market trend has nothing to do with them. They are only responsible for getting money. Come with a large deposit and exchange for a large amount of chips. Half a year is enough for Wall Street to plow Nvidia back and forth several times. Even if the stock ban is subsequently lifted, it is impossible for Li Yuan to make money. On Thursday, no surprise, Qingtian Capital directly raised Nvidia and invested a huge stone in the entire financial market. On this day, Quantitative invested us $2.2 billion in chips, Qingtian Capital used us $1 billion in funds, and Nvidia fell 8 points. It is a very rare thing for China Capital to raise a flag in the US stock market. It is even rare for the entire US stock market to be raised. Once the card is raised, it means that a large number of chips are locked, and the entire ticket will go crazy. Whoever raises the sign will be unlucky. In a pure financial market, any ticket may be discarded. Anyone who is willing to lock up his own funds is tantamount to handing over his money to others. In the entire market, some people are bullish and some are bearish. Morgan can no longer even get the short contract, it has all been taken away by others. And the stock price has not gone down much, because the short and long orders have formed a hedge, and both are playing games. Whoever wins in the end takes away the profit. Mondale asked the media to issue a press release. Qingtian Capital lost us $280 million in one day. After closing, Li Yuan went to bed. After all, he was too tired. He had been fishing in troubled waters last night. Nvidia's transaction volume was $3.6 billion in one day, and he took nearly $1 billion in chips. The current price of Nvidia is only $133. $1 billion today is equivalent to the number of chips worth $1.5 billion acquired in the past few days. He currently holds 16.68% of Nvidia's total share capital, which is very close to his goal. He knows that the chips in his hands are of little value. After all, the stock itself is not valuable. What is valuable is the expectation, and what is valuable is the funds that are willing to pay for it. Stocks are called chips, which illustrates this problem in disguise. When he woke up, he saw Chen Ji looking at him with a strange expression. "Sister Chen? With your expression, could it be that you did something to me while I was sleeping? And then you weren't very satisfied." Sister Chen said helplessly, "I thought you were joking, but I didn't expect you were really going to take down Nvidia. Isn't this to earn some hard-earned money? Staying up all night has made my kidneys weak. If I don't earn some money, who would want to do this job? But it's very risky for you to do this. Even if someone is willing to take over your stock, the price will be lowered a lot under the current circumstances. Besides, are you sure you can make money from Qingtian Capital? At present, the position of taking over the stock is too taller. The current holding cost of Qingtian Capital is very high, close to $145. No matter how much is added in the future, the cost will not be significantly reduced. In the current situation, who is willing to take over at this price? Chen Ji didn't know the situation of Qingtian Capital, but he knew the situation of Li Yuan's account. His account has been secretly receiving chips from behind, and it must be lower than the cost of Qingtian Capital. Even so, the current cost is close to $140. Well, I know. Wait until tomorrow, and Sister Chen can help me contact someone. Contact me tomorrow? Do you have enough chips now? If you only have a dozen points, they won't want it. Western capital is not monolithic, there are many factions. In particular, some established traditional capital cannot reap the dividends of emerging finance at all. New technology companies are the enterprises with the highest added value, which is much higher than the added value of traditional enterprises. But for really powerful companies, they have no investment ability at all, so they can only rely on luck and make some soup. They must also want to eat meat, but who is willing to let it? This state has lasted for many years. If Li Yuan can give them 30% of the chips, they will definitely be willing to take it, and even give them a slight premium. Because they have the means to directly take the company into their hands through these chips, and they cannot let other capital turn Nvidia into an empty shell. But if it is only a dozen percent, they will look down upon it. This little bargaining chip is not enough for them to take the initiative. It will be the same as not having it. Well, I know, I will definitely give them more than 20%, let's talk about the price first. Good. Li Yuan ate something and moved around the room for a while. He also read the news on the internet, and Morgan even produced overwhelming evidence proving that he lost more than $200 million in one night. After facing the evidence of Stonehammer, the domestic media went crazy. What they said before was still vague, but now they directly and openly belittled Li Yuan for not overestimating his abilities. He thought he had achieved some achievements in the A-share market and did not take the world seriously. Here, I still want to speculate in the US stock market, the most mature system in the world. While damaging Li Yuan, he also belittled the domestic system. They are very good at this. Li Yuan's fans are the most bullied. After all, in the face of evidence, they can't even stick to their tough words. Some fans asked Li Yuan to stand up and explain to fans why he wanted to deceive fans' feelings and why he didn't dare to admit that he had lost money. Li Yuan didn't bother to pay attention at all. Because the results will be available in just a few days. My last reply was that I don't want those media to keep setting the pace. If they keep setting the pace for half a month, it will become true if it is not true. It doesn't matter now, if you can get results within a few days, just bring it. Anyway, if the heat doesn't go away, there will be a chance to fight back. Opening WeChat, he received a kiss from Zhang Yuling, and received messages from people from all walks of life, including some who wanted to ask for certification. What is there to prove? I just read a media report and found out why he has so much free time. I silently changed the notes for verification. These guys are boring. I guess I said a few words and the screenshot was immediately sent out, saying it was first-hand information. It's just that Zhang Yuling would care about this matter, which surprised him. Thank you, wife, for caring. I'm fine. Soon, Zhang Yuling replied, of course I know you're fine. Are you comfortable living across the door? Your bodyguard betrayed you. That's true, but I do work all the time. Li Yuan has bodyguards, arranged by Tang Jianjun and others, who basically stay in the garage 24 hours a day. As long as he goes downstairs, he will follow him immediately, take him to the company, and then stay in the company garage. Li Yuan sometimes didn't know where the group of people were, but Zhang Yuling found out. I believe you, otherwise I wouldn't care about you. I'm going out, bye. Li Yuan. He always thought Zhang Yuling didn't care, but he didn't expect that she actually cared a little bit. If you don't care at all, even if you know that you are in the opposite door, you will not expose this matter. Anyway, I have to finish this matter first. What surprised Li Yuan was that the National Fund and the village chief never intervened in this matter, or even talked to him. This also proves that he is now in a position of absolute initiative. Soon, it was late at night. After the US stock market opened, Nvidia's stock price plummeted, and it soon fell by 5 points. Quantitative funds are very powerful. Just a little bit of hard work has increased Li Yuan's costs. Even if there are more than 1 billion or more additional funds later, the cost will not be reduced. Qingtian Capital, which was on the verge of being liquidated, could only add funds again and again, and every time it added, there would be a reminder to increase its holdings. Many people feel that Qingtian Capital is crazy. They have reached this point and are still risking their lives to increase their holdings. How much should I increase my holdings? Increase your holdings to 30% and then issue a takeover offer? Why should you, a Chinese funder, acquire an American company? You don't deserve it at all. You don't have this bloodline. Man, the brokerage has no chips in hand. I need to borrow some from you. Now I only have the last bid, right? Yes, my friend, you have indeed forced your opponents into a blind corner. But at the same time, you have also forced us into a blind corner. We are going for the long term, and we are going to push Nvidia's market value to us $500 billion. Now you force us to abandon this shell. We are the masters of Nvidia. We are fully capable of cultivating another Nvidia. Isn't it good to let the Chinese capital spend billions or even tens of billions of dollars and only get an empty shell? After all, this is our territory. The other side is going to pee on our heads. I admit that you have convinced me, and I can give you part of the chips in my hand, but then we need you to cooperate with us to bring Nvidia's stock price back again. Even now, the noble soul of Nvidia has been destroyed by the dirty Chinese capital. Even if it is tarnished, we will squeeze out the last bit of its value. Of course, this is our common interest. Mondale breathed a sigh of relief. Then start calling other agencies. There is only one requirement: borrow stocks. He didn't lie. It was indeed impossible to get the contract from the brokerage. They even smashed all the chips in their hands and couldn't move anymore. In order not to blow up the position, Qingtian Capital can be said to have entered the market with crazy funds today, and the chips in the market were consumed very quickly. But he knew that this group of people had many, many chips. Nvidia still has a market value of more than $50 billion. After a few phone calls, he actually got a full 15% of the chips. These guys must have made a fortune in it. With this 15% bargaining chip, he is fully confident that he can completely blow up Qingtian Capital. With the remaining chips, he could also deliberately pretend to be careless and use it to repay his short order, so as to earn some profits and make up for the losses. After all, this 15% is probably only half of what those guys took away during this period, and they must have more chips in their hands than before. Otherwise, why make an agreement with him to raise the price again? At this time, a meeting was being held in an institution on Wall Street. That bastard Mondale ruined our layout. With Nvidia being such a big fan, we didn't make much money at all. They were very annoyed. The market situation this year was not good. They originally wanted to raise Nvidia to more than $200 billion, and then conduct a high stock split to cash out part of the funds to make up for other losses. As a result, it was raised to more than $90 billion, and it was implicated. There was no way to get angry at Mondale, because everyone was on the same side after all. And so far, Mondale has done nothing wrong. This time, taking out 1/3 of the chips in our hands is already the limit of what we can do. Next, we must let Mondale use the short order in his hand to bring Nvidia to a market value of $100 billion, otherwise it's a loss of money. I believe Mondale will not refuse this opportunity when he sees our sincerity. That amount of Chinese funds is too crazy. It may be a good thing for us to completely bury him in it this time. It is better for Morgan to come forward than for us to come forward, much better. Yes, Wall Street will not let China Capital make profits there, because their financial system is all learned from us, and we are their teachers. It will be very shameful if they lose. How many chips do we have now? If you include the 10% held by Morgan, there is probably about 40% left. Mondale is such a shrewd man. If he doesn't take out the chips in his hand, he will ask us to borrow them. Hey, that guy always thought that we were grabbing the chips he smashed in the market. We already hold so many, and taking them any more will only reduce our flexibility. At this time, someone raised his hand and said, "Everyone, I'm afraid we don't have 40% anymore, because I lent my chips to the brokerage. You should understand that I can't refuse the conditions offered by the brokerage. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 249. Lending stocks to brokers is actually a normal thing, because brokers can make money. They trade Nvidia no longer every day or two. Basically, they are calculated on an annual basis. Most of the positions will hardly be moved. Isn't it normal to lend them to brokers and earn 6 or 7 points of profit every year? As for whether those votes have any impact on their control, under normal circumstances, there is no impact, because if they want to operate, they can just go to the brokerage to open a contract. If this brokerage does not exist, there is no way that the other brokerage will also disappear, right? It can be said that it has absolutely no impact on itself. It's like lending out your own money. When you don't need it, you can leave it out to collect long-term interest. When you need it, you can borrow it from others and you will only have to pay short-term interest. After this news came out, no one blamed the guy because someone else was doing it too. They immediately started looking for those brokers to see how many stocks the brokers still had. As long as you can get it back, it's not a big deal. However, half an hour later, when all the data was gathered in this conference room, everyone was stunned. The leader slapped the table and shouted, "Why is there only 24% left? At the beginning, we held 55% of Nvidia, the brokerage held 20%, and the market included several natural person major shareholders who collectively held 25%. Now we only have 24% left. Where are the chips? Contact Mondale immediately and intercept our chips. We are about to be kicked out. Bastard. If 15% of the chips in Mondale's hand can be captured, then there will still be 39% overall, plus Morgan's 10%, which means he still has the initiative. It's impossible for them to give up now. Not only did they not make any money in this position, they also lost a lot of money entering it. But before their phone call came through, Mondale's phone number came first. "Guys, I know you have made a lot of money, give me some more chips, and I will completely blow up option capital." They are just a little bit closer. Li Yuan looked at Nvidia's stock price of $120 and was really greedy. But he knows that as long as the chips are in his own hands, they are worthless. For example, in 2021, Wingtech paid a high price to acquire an NWF semiconductor company in Daying. At this time, this semiconductor company was already going bankrupt, and its own value was pitiful. However, in order to expand its semiconductor business, Wingtech was still willing to acquire it at a premium, and finally gave a price of nearly $90 million. That company was also happy to have someone take over the business, and the market didn't think it was a big deal. A company on the verge of bankruptcy itself didn't have very powerful technology, and they would definitely be happy if there was an enemy who was willing to take over the business. However, after the deposit was given and the contract of intent was signed, Daying directly vetoed the deal. The reason is that their beautiful father does not allow Chinese funds to acquire any semiconductor companies in Western countries, even if they are junk. After all, there are still 3,000 nails in the broken ship, and they are determined not to allow Chinese funds to get any benefit from them. Even the beautiful country has such lenient control over rubbish companies like NWF, and Nvidia can't even think about it. Whenever Li Yuan reveals his intentions, he will soon be stopped by various means. After all, when it comes to shamelessness, who can compare to the United States? The A-share market will leave a bottom line, while the US stock market will be stripped of your underwear. Nvidia currently has a market value of only $52 billion. Li Yuan holds 27% of the shares, and its market value is only $14 billion. In fact, he spent a full $16 billion for this bargaining chip. Qingtian Capital spent less because the two parties held positions at different times. Qingtian Capital currently holds 17% of the shares, with a total value of $8.9 billion. In fact, the investment has reached $10.3 billion. If Li Yuan had not been covering for them, there is no doubt that Qingtian Capital would have been liquidated in this position. A large amount of chips have been taken over by Li Yuan, and there is little pressure on Qingtian Capital. At present, the cost of Qingtian Capital has dropped. After all, both parties are under great pressure. In order not to expose any flaws, Qingtian Capital frantically takes chips. The cost of Qingtian Capital is $130, and they received a large amount of chips worth about $120, which reduced the cost a lot. It can be right on the liquidation line. Their total loss cannot exceed $7.7 billion. Once the loss reaches this level, it means liquidation. Now it's actually only 3 points behind. However, they can continue to increase capital investment in the future. Currently, they still have almost $500 million, which will be $5 billion when leveraged. According to the degree of gaming at the position of $120, if Morgan wants to explode, he must at least drop Nvidia's stock price to 105. After all, Qingtian Capital would spend hundreds of millions of dollars on every subsequent point. If it weren't for Li Yuan's help, even more money would have to be spent. Li Yuan knew that it had nothing to do with quantification now. After 3 consecutive weeks of games, quantification was slowly introduced into the game, and in the end Morgan had to put aside quantification and end the game himself. Morgan had no choice, because he invested too much, and unknowingly invested $20 to $30 billion. Leverage is also money. Although the principal is only $2 to $3 billion, in fact, losses will also be leveraged. The greater the investment, the stronger the desire to win. After all, people are not programs. After emotions are substituted, it is inevitable that they cannot help themselves. Originally, he just wanted to use his own funds to take over today, reserve more funds for Qingtian Capital, and continue to mediate with quantitative. But the damage was so severe today that he was almost full and couldn't buy any more. In addition, we couldn't let Prime Capital spend just a few $100 million or more than $1 billion to get through it easily. They would analyze the data, so we asked Prime Capital to take over almost $3 billion and directly maximize the position. There was almost an hour before the closing, and Li Yuan had already called Chenji half an hour ago. At this time, Chenji was communicating with the other party. After chatting for a while, she handed the phone to Li Yuan. "Hello. Hello, sir." The two parties officially started communication. "The lady just said that you have Nvidia shares, sir." "More than 20%. "Yes, but I have no interest in Nvidia and want to find someone to take over." "Can you tell me how many shares it is?" 24%. "This is indeed an attractive number, but there is some gap with our expectations. We need more than 36%. Li Yuan smiled and said, "If there are that many, I will personally end it." Nvidia's net profit in the fourth quarter of last year was a full $1.1 billion. Do you think such a company only deserves a market value of $50 billion? The other party was silent for a while and said, "Nvidia is a good company. If Mr. only has 5%, we are very happy to take over and are even willing to give a premium of more than 30%. If Mr. has more than 36%, we are even willing to give 60% premium, but only for the 24% position. I'm sorry sir, we can't give you a price. This position is too embarrassing for them." They also know that Nvidia is very strong and have been laying out their plans in the past 2 years. It's a pity that I can't get too many chips at all, and I can't run to support other funds, so currently there are only 4% of the stocks in total, just as a supplement, and to mix in some soup. Although it is enough to shock them that someone can hold 24%, it is really tasteless to get this ratio, and it is a pity to abandon it. Even if you add what they have in hand, it is only 28%. Overall, they cannot defeat the opponent and cannot take the initiative. They have no final say in subsequent capital operations. It is very difficult to make a profit. You may even be stranded with a large amount of money. In the securities market, one can either control the market and harvest funds at will. Either you can mix it up, and you don't have too many chips in your hand, so you can make as much money as possible while still maintaining absolute freedom and being able to retreat at any time. What if I say that neither Vanguard nor BlackRock currently hold less than 25% of their combined chips? Sir, you are kidding. They can't hold only such a small position in the stocks they dominate. Li Yuan smiled and said, if they are leading it, then where do the 24% of the stocks in my hand come from? Now comes the problem. It can be seen from Nvidia's market that Qingtian Capital's shareholding ratio has reached 17%, and these chips are limited. If there is a group of people outside holding 24%, plus their 4%, then the total is 45%, plus the 7% held by the founder of Nvidia, it is 52%. The 20% held by the brokers will not be considered for the time being, because they cannot open contracts, which means that the chips in the hands of the brokers are gone. But even so, the number of other funds held will definitely not be small. Nvidia has been the hottest ticket in the US stock market in the past 2 weeks, and it has attracted a lot of money from around the world. It's not surprising that outsiders hold 20%, maybe even more. Based on this calculation, it seems that the guys at Vanguard and BlackRock really don't have much leverage left. This is an exciting number, because if successful, it may bring tens of billions of dollars in return. But there are still risks. Sir, we still can't give a price. It's okay, don't worry, I can wait, I will continue to collect chips on the market. Although I know it will be difficult, I am willing to try. Sir, please give me a few minutes and we will think about this. Man, my cost is very low, only $132. I believe you can give a reasonable quotation. If there is no quotation, I think there is no need for us to continue to waste time. After Li Yuan finished speaking, he hung up the phone. He told the truth. In addition to concealing 3% of the stock, he even told the other party the cost price. It's not that he can't get more chips, but for his status, more chips also means more pressure. If he is only pursuing the profit of this account, of course the more chips, the better. But in fact, the money in this account is enough. Things like US dollars have almost no value in individual hands, and there are only a handful of scenarios where they can be used. Even if we purchase raw materials, we won't use that much. He didn't want to serve the black and gray industry, and he couldn't do it himself. His home court is always in China, so the third phase of the fund is the most important. There is also his share in it, which is equivalent to illegal money laundering. Chen Ji asked at this time, what if the other party doesn't agree? Sister Chen, isn't this your problem? It means you are not looking for our target customers. Chen Ji. It seems that's really the case. Li Yuan inexplicably gave her strength. She began to wonder if there were any other customers. Li Yuan has been weighing the pros and cons of both parties. There is almost no room for maneuver on the part of Qingtian Capital. Once no one takes over the chips in his hand, the chips in Qingtian Capital's hands will be worthless. Then he can only make back the losses of Qingtian Capital through the chips in his hand. No one knows how long this process will last, but it will not exceed half a year. When the chips in the hands of Optimus Capital are lifted, Nvidia's stock is destined to be worthless. If he can't sell it today, he will start preparing a deposit for Qingtian Capital. At this time, the closing time is getting closer, and Nvidia's stock price began to rebound. I rushed in a lot of money and started shopping around like crazy. After the price reached $130, many people were willing to sell their chips, and the overall trading volume was still rising rapidly. But after all, they only have a small amount of chips, even if the number of people is large and the transaction frequency is high. About 10 minutes have passed, and the trading volume has increased by nearly $1 billion. The rush for funds is quite fierce, but it seems to be suppressing it, not wanting the stock price to break through too much. By about $130, it held on, and trading began to slow down. However, whenever chips come out, they will still be eaten immediately. Chen Ji thought about it for a while and said, maybe there are people who can cooperate. But I'm not very sure. How about I contact them and try? Even if it doesn't succeed, we can still create a bidding situation to give those people before a sense of oppression. Li Yuan waved his hand and said, no need, they have probably made a decision by now. Chen Ji's cell phone rang at exactly this moment. Since the other party has called, it means that they have made a decision and are willing to make an offer. It remains to be seen whether Li Yuan can be satisfied, but at least the matter is done. How do you know? She handed the phone to Li Yuan in confusion. Li Yuan, because someone is assisting me, someone is trying to gain ground on the board. What do you think is the reason? Just like a liar, the more guilty he is, the more anxious he will be to prove himself. So, you are not guilty. This guy Li Yuan seems to be so upright in everything he does. A scumbag can be so obvious that he doesn't mind what others say. Ha! Li Yuan answered the phone with a smile. Sir, we have finished our discussion and are willing to give you a 10% premium on your cost. What do you think of this price? Li Yuan said, if it were before, I would have accepted this price. But now, I'm sorry, I need a 20% premium. When Li Yuan said this, Chen Ji was stunned. When did Li Yuan become so easy to talk to? They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 250. Not only did Chen Ji feel that Li Yuan was too generous today, but even the other party was confused after hearing Li Yuan's conditions. They just gave a low price as a test first, and they had already thought about it when Li Yuan opened his mouth. Leave room for price so that there is room for subsequent negotiations. If you give a premium of 30% or 50% at the beginning, there will be basically no further negotiations. However, Li Yuan only wanted a 20% premium. The current stock price is almost equal to Li Yuan's cost. Even if there is a 20% premium, it is equivalent to more than $150 per share. In this position, you can get a lot of chips and even achieve the effect of controlling the market. The premium of 40% is very reasonable. Giving Li Yuan this price to others is almost equivalent to giving it away for free. The current situation is not about begging others to take over. If we were asking others to take over, the bulk price might be as low as 10%. This is the stage of the chip game, and the value of the chips itself is very high. Maybe if you just pull it for a day or two, the premium will come back. For a moment they thought they had heard wrong. Li Yuan said with a smile, I need cash now and I need to settle the money as soon as possible, so the requirements are not very high. I just need to earn a little bit and treat it as a friend. Of course, sir, if you are so sincere, we will definitely become friends. There is nothing fake about this matter. After all, the stocks obtained will not lie to others. Then let's set the price at $159, and if possible, start the process immediately. No problem, sir. That's it? Chen Ji is responsible for conducting transactions with the other party. If it is in the name of a company, the transaction procedure is more complicated, but now the handover is done in the name of a private person. The contract template is the same, but there are more contracts. Li Yuan didn't even need to sign, because his account had its own signature function, and each contract was signed differently. Only the account is recognized, not the person. When Chen Ji was sorting out the contract, she said, "It's rare for you to be generous. Do you want the two companies to raise the stock price, and then you can sell the remaining 3% of the stock at a high price?" "No, I just want to keep the rest in my mind. If you really want to make money, just ask for a little more premium and just make friends. After all, there are only 3% stocks, so what if the stock price doubles? If you can get a 10% premium on 24% of the stocks, the profit will be almost the same." As long as Li Yuan is willing to negotiate, it is not impossible to get a 20% premium. There is no way the remaining 3% of stocks can make as much money as the 24% of chips. Making friends? At least a few $1 billion, just to make friends. Hold head high. Haha, I won't be happy if others try to make friends with you. I never thought I would see the day when you take the initiative to make friends with others. Sister Chen, are you wrong? When did I make friends and didn't I give away hundreds of millions to others? It's just that you don't want it yourself, so you turned away. Chen Ji. If she accepts it, I'm afraid Li Yuan will have trouble sleeping and eating. Once someone like her starts to cause trouble, no one can handle it, let alone bring her children into trouble. As Chen Ji started to get busy, a sum of money began to enter Li Yuan's account. Nvidia's stock price reached a maximum of 132 today, which is exactly Li Yuan's cost price. At a 20% premium, he could earn more than $3 billion. If you remove the remaining 3% of chips, you will have earned about $1.5 billion. Compared with previous results, this data is very ordinary. Li Yuan is not planning to sell these 3% stocks. As long as the other party operates well, Nvidia's subsequent market value of over $500 billion will be basically stable. After all, world demand will not change. As for whether it can break through 1 trillion, it depends on whether the method is strong enough. Anyway, people like Morgan and BlackRock have the power to push Nvidia to a market value of $1 trillion. Qingtian Capital must have made a profit. Yesterday it lost us $7.8 billion, and today its losses reached more than us $1 billion. Now the overall profit is 2 points, and the floating profit on the book is close to $200 million. From yesterday's data to today's data, today's profit should be about $1 billion. By the time Chen Ji finished her work, the US stock market had just closed. Li Yuan called Yao Yingsong. "Send me a screenshot of today's viewing later. Just the key figures, don't reveal too much other information." "Okay, boss." Yao Yingsong agreed simply. In fact, he hasn't even seen today's data. "Currently I am having something to eat with the trader and chatting about the situation." He knew through the mobile phone interface that Nvidia's stock price rebounded a lot in late trading, but he had the same idea as the trader. They've already raised their signs, so it's meaningless. Sooner or later there will be a margin call, and no one knows what will happen after the stock is lifted. Stocks that have not been released are of no use at all. Soon, he entered the trading room after eating. After sorting out the data for an hour, he sent a screenshot of the final profit to Li Yuan. Nvidia currently holds a position of $9.8 billion, and the overall profit is only 3 points. The cost they paid was us $9.55 billion. Today's floating profit is a little over $1 billion, which can be regarded as making up for the previous losses on the books. Less than 2 minutes after he sent the screenshot, a notification tone popped up on his phone. It was Li Yuan who updated his social media. Not only did he follow all of Li Yuan's accounts, but he also gave prompt permission to ensure that he could understand some of Li Yuan's updates as soon as possible. Anyway, he has never been so interested in dating. Li Yuan directly announced his floating profit data today on the social platform. The shock of $1 billion was still huge. Just updated, there are many people counting in the comment area. I'd like to ask, I don't know how to count. How much is this? I know numbers, let me do it. This is 10 million. Do you understand numbers? This is 100 million. Brothers, pay attention to the key points, look at the date and unit, this is $1 billion in one night. The US stock market has just closed, and Yuan Shen can't wait to slap those media in the face. By the way, do you have any friends who copied their homework and made money? What a waste of money. When Yuan Shen was trading Nvidia, I entered the market immediately. It rose a bit in the late trading, but it is still losing more than 10 points. The drop was too fierce in the past few days. Then how come Yuan Shen earns so much? Brother, you have to admit that you are indeed incompetent. Nonsense, if I'm good at it, do I need to copy homework everywhere? Many people copied their homework after the media revealed that Li Yuan had entered Nvidia. After all, there is very little news about Li Yuan's trading of a certain stock in the market. Even the previous Bitcoin was only exposed after the trading was completed. Bitcoin has been very volatile recently and has been falling. It will be a matter of time before it breaks through $30,000, and the trading volume has dropped a lot. Looking at Qingtian Capital frequently raising signs, you can tell that they have entered the market today with a lot of funds. Although the overall situation is floating profit, they have already raised their signs. This data is of little reference significance. It is simply that Yuan Shen wants to discuss those people. Media. This is the truth. Yuan Shen will definitely lose a lot of money on Nvidia this time. This is not a problem of ability, it is simply a matter of being sniped. Otherwise Yuan Shen would not be forced to raise his card, let alone increase his position crazily. The more positions you add, the more funds will be trapped. Today can only be regarded as a superficial relief, but in fact the losses will only increase. Anyway, Yuan Shen doesn't need this little money, so let's treat it as a loss to buy face. There are many fans of Li Yuan who can distinguish the situation. They generally don't set any rhythm, and they don't blindly worship Li Yuan. They really regard Li Yuan as a god. They paid attention to Li Yuan and were looking for opportunities, and did not care about Li Yuan's temporary losses. The media naturally took advantage of these people's speeches to look for face for themselves, saying that Li Yuan was trying to make a fool of himself, and did not hesitate to lose more money to create the illusion that his account was floating. In fact, this time he would lose more than half of his worth. The richest man is about to change hands. The media is full of confidence, and they are basically copying some comments, which is similar to the one who directly talks about the 690 tactical core graphics card. How can they analyze such deep data? Only senior practitioners will consider the risks involved, and most people can only see surface data. Even senior practitioners never thought that Li Yuan would lose more than half of his net worth on this ticket because the current situation has changed. Even if he wanted to blow up Li Yuan, he couldn't do it. He was forced to pull up a wave. It was obvious that he had encountered extremely strong pressure. No matter how much the stock price fell in the future, it would be difficult for Li Yuan to blow up his position. If the position is not liquidated, the losses will be extremely limited. Is more than $1 billion considered money to Li Yuan? Besides, he was trading a fund this time, and he couldn't tell whether the money in it belonged to Li Yuan. Even if he loses money, he only loses the money of the LP bosses who invested in him. A new round of public opinion war on the internet has begun. The National Fund was a little dumbfounded when they saw Li Yuan provoking trouble. That group of media encountered stubborn donkeys this time. Why bother with this guy? Zhangzhou University was forced into ban mode on all major platforms. If Li Yuan is interviewed in the future, if a reporter makes trouble and asks him about university affairs, he will definitely take out Zhangzhou University and flog him. With his reputation, I am afraid that Zhangzhou University's enrollment will be reduced by 30% in the future. If Li Yuan had been more generous and mentioned it less often, maybe the situation would have improved. If Li Yuan is stingy and mentions it every day, as long as he doesn't get into trouble for illegal crimes, then mentioning it is equivalent to stabbing Zhangzhou University 10 times, the kind of fatal knife. Without enough outstanding students, no matter how good a university is, it cannot withstand several years of hard work. They looked at the report and knew that the current situation was not optimistic. If the sign is not raised, I am very optimistic about the follow-up, but if the sign is already raised, what kind of waves can be made? Li Yuan didn't even dare to raise his hand in the A-share market, so he raised his hand for Song's shares, using very little capital. Now it seems that the position will not be liquidated, which is good news. We will lose all the $1.5 billion, which is already the best situation. They are now very open-minded and were even ready to make a margin call before. Before yesterday, they expected to lose more than $5 billion this time. Now that I don't have to lose money, I feel extremely comfortable, as if I have made money. Almost everyone is not optimistic about Li Yuan's operation this time, and netizens are slowly learning about the problem after raising the sign. Although there are still some people who are harsh and think that Li Yuan is different from others, their voices are much softer. Mondale was forced to participate in a meeting at this time. The theme of the meeting is very simple, that is, trying to get back some of the chips as soon as possible. They even directly opened their eyes and found out the holders of all stocks. The current situation is very strange. Funds from China account for 22%, funds from international account for 7%, and then there are them. Although they collected a sum of chips at the end of the day, they still only add up to 26%. Among them, the founder still holds 7%, followed by a large group of redneck capital, several holding positions of more than 3 points, and 7 or 8 holdings of 1 or 2 points, which adds up to a full 29% of the stock. After this calculation, the number of scattered chips on the market is very small. Only 9%. Of course, the 7% of international funds can also be counted as scattered chips. It's those rednecks who are secretly taking our chips. These bastards. After Mondale saw this data, he cursed directly. As a result, everyone looked at him. Mr. Mondale, you personally handed them so many chips. And China holds 22%, and you personally gave them to them. Mondale lowered his head. The chips can fall into anyone's hands, but they cannot fall into the hands of those rednecks. Because the two sides are mortal enemies. For a long time, the capital from the redneck side has not been able to participate in the dividends of the internet high-tech industry, and the profits earned are quite small. No one could have imagined that they would seize this opportunity. The others were too lazy to talk nonsense to Mondale and continued to look at the board. According to the transaction data, the chips in the hands of the rednecks were all just obtained. In other words, either they had found an agent before, or they spent money to buy them from others. In terms of paths, it shows its international funds, even accounts in some small countries. Mondale, shouldn't you feel familiar with this scene? What? The last time you were trading Bitcoin, wasn't it because you were sniped by an account? Mondale instantly gritted his teeth. It's those bastards, they're targeting me again. Asshole. Don't you see now that this fund is in the same group as Qingtian Capital? Qingtian Capital is just a bait thrown by the other party, and this fund is their bulk. I dare to swear to God, when they hold more than 30% of the shares, they will definitely issue an acquisition offer for Nvidia. We must stop it, we must stop it. Do you hear it? The speaker roared and banged the table. He glanced at Mondale and said, "Morgan will provide the funds this time. Qingtian Capital has already raised its cards and there is no threat. They must have enough chips." Mondale lowered his head and said, "I need to report this matter." "Of course, but Mondale, you have to remember that if you lose this time, your life journey will come to an end." It's hard to say how much they would lose, but Mondale would certainly lose his life. The last time he spent so much money, he failed to make money on Bitcoin, which was already a big mistake. Fortunately, the losses caused were not large, and the Morgan Group still had enough trust in him. But this time is different. Once a loss occurs, each household will lose more than $5 billion, which adds up to a loss of $20 to $30 billion. He said this to remind Mondale to be more flexible when reporting, otherwise Morgan will not provide the money and there will be problems with everyone's capital allocation in the future. "Yes, I will try my best." Mondale agreed. This time, it was his life and death battle. "At the beginning of the month, I shamelessly asked for a monthly ticket, and I will open a leaflet later to talk about the manuscript debt.